Hey, how about that? I tell you, I never get tired. Never get tired. Never get tired of that new intro I made. I love it. It's awesome. So glad I did that. Hey everybody, how you doing today? It's your man James back again with some more live stream action for you. This is the one I've been promising you for a while. I said I got a sequential thinking piece getting ready to come out, and well, here it is. So I'm glad you could join me today. So before we get any further into it, let's check in the chat here, see who's here. And we got, well, here's Leg Kick, because Leg Kick is almost always here. Hello, my friend. Glad you could join us today. And let's see. So there's that. But yeah, I'm very excited about doing this one. It's like I said, I've been working on for a little while here, probably about a month. You know, like I said, these are never timely with the topics I talk about, because I do the deep dive. I like to give you all the info. I like to dig in and, get everything all nice and, all the receipts set up for you. So that's why you never see these, right when something breaks, because I got to get the receipts. I don't want to come in here and just throw a bunch of bull your way. I want you guys to see that I know what I'm talking about when I'm telling you this stuff. So this is what I'm working on today. We're going to be talking about how it looks like reality is finally setting in for the comic book industry, and even larger for the entertainment industry in and of itself, with things that have been going on. Certain realities they can no longer ignore, financial ones especially. And but even though that they're having to admit now there are problems, they still can't seem to stop wanting to gaslight people, and can't seem to tell the truth about why they're a problem. And we're going to get into some of that today. And I got a lot of juicy stuff I found. I've been all over the internet going through all these articles, getting stuff ready. So it should be interesting for you. So I want to thank you all for joining me today. And so say, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, be sure you do, so you don't miss any more content like this and other things I'm doing around here. If you you want to help me out some more, drop a little like down there on the like button there, so you can help the algorithms boost us up a bit. And other than that, I just want to thank you for joining me. So let's not waste any more time. Just get right on into it. So let's share the screen. And there we go. So we're going to start this out here. Now, yeah, it's the beat, but I did get it through a place called Archive rather than directly from the beat, because we certainly want to give them any more traffic than they deserve. But this is where it all began for me. This is the first thing I saw. And as you can see, it's from a little bit ago. You can see it's dated there back in mid-April. And this is from Bounding in the, it is from the beat. This is Tilting at Windmills by Brian Hibbs, a very well-known comic retailer. And he's talking about the book scan numbers from 2023. And it says comic sales sag, but Scholastics was still a powerhouse. So right there, it's telling you, see, this is the first bit right here. We're going to get into some stuff where they're actually kind of telling you some truth about what's going on inside the comic industry. Stuff that that they've been denying for years. They keep throwing up that famous ICV2 poll, with the 2.2 billion comics are doing great. They're doing better than ever. And now we're starting to see that, because how things are going. And you've seen this in the news media. You've seen it in video games. You're seeing it in the film industry. And you're seeing it in the comic industry. The numbers aren't adding up. All they're champing at the bit, all they're trying to fudge the numbers isn't working, because in the end, you can only get away with that for so long. And then the numbers are going to come crashing down you. And that's what we're going to start seeing here at the start right here, is how the realities that a lot of us have talked about, and that I've talked about in past episodes of Sequential Thinking, and others you've seen all over the internet talked about, they're coming true. We warned them this was coming, and they kept just pushing us off. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're a bunch of bigots. Shut up. Comics are doing great. And now we're seeing that the chickens are truly coming home to roost. So he starts out here. There are three kinds of lies: lies, damned lies, and statistics. Dogman number 11 was the best-selling graphic novel in North America in 2023, with more than 1 million units sold. As the graphic novels market in the U.S. sagged from pandemic highs, the units were down nearly 20% from 2022, but it was still the third biggest year for sales ever since we started doing yearly analysis of BookScan sales charts. So here they are. Even here, they're trying to spin it. Yeah, they're down, but that's because it's post-pandemic, and it's still the third biggest one since we've kept these numbers. And like, well, how long have we kept the numbers? I mean, if we've been keeping them for like 30 years, okay, maybe that sounds impressive. If you've only been doing it for 3 years, well, that's not so impressive, is it? Continuing, the big picture of the 44.7 million graphic novels sold via BookScan in 2023, nearly 21.8 million were manga, almost 49%. So take that into account right there. Half of all the graphic novels sold in the United States in 2023 through BookScan were manga. Kids comics were approximately 17 million copies, about 38%. And the remaining 5.9 million sold were primarily aimed at adults, around 13%. So that kind of gives you a breakdown here of, again, what we've talked about, manga's domination in the markets, both East and West. Nobody's reading the Western comics like they used to, but they seem to really all love manga. So this just more, again, just keep these numbers in mind as we go through this. Scholastic is the biggest graphic novel publisher in the U.S. book market, and they have done it with massive hits. Scholastic is 39% of the market with only 596 different titles. In the top 750 alone, they sold a staggering 8.5 million copies of only 116 titles. So right now, again, they're championing at the bit for this whole thing with Scholastic. But again, Scholastic is not the mainstream comic industry. He's putting out these numbers to you. Hey, this is doing great. The manga is doing great, and this and that. But we still haven't really seen what's happening in the comic book industry. What's happening there? And then we get it. Marvel and DC combined are less than 10% of the book market. There you go. Right there. I mean, right there. I mean, you can almost say I could stop the stream right here. It's like, there it is. Manga, 50% of the books sold were manga. Scholastics is doing great, but, the mainstream, direct market industry, less than 10%. I mean, but again, we knew this was coming. We told them this was coming. When adding up the top 750 sales of traditional direct market publishers, they combine for fewer than 750,000 books sold, 10% of what Scholastic sold. So there it is. Even against Scholastics, they're just a shadow. This is how bad off the industry is. Now you're starting to see the real numbers, not the inflated bar graph they use. Oh, 2.2 billion, we're doing better than ever. Yeah, when you add in manga, when you add in Scholastics, when you add in, stuff like Dogman, yeah, that then the numbers pump up. But when you're talking about the direct market, the direct mainstream American comic book market, which is what we all talk about. Whenever I say the comic industry, that's what we're talking about. They know that, we know that, everybody knows that. And what are they doing? 750 books sold, 10% of Scholastic. They're only 10% of the entire book market. Manga's eating their lunch. All the stuff we told them, all the stuff I've said for years, all the stuff you guys have heard for years from people like me. It's all right here. Marvel continues to severely underperform in the bookstore market, with their licensees having greater success, sometimes with the exact same material. Marvel had one book in the top 750, while Viz, Disney, Scholastic, and Abrams beat every single comic Marvel itself published. And again, and as often been said with people, where goes Marvel? There goes the industry. So when they're getting their lunch handed to them by companies like Viz, you know that's not good. DC had a pretty bad year with their lowest sales since 2004, down 25% from 2022 in the bookstore market. Even with their highest ever number of titles in the total list. In 2023, they only had 14 titles in the top 750. In 2013, 10 years ago, they had 130. That is a huge, troubling drop. But maybe laying off nearly your entire sales and marketing teams is not a great strategy for growth. Yeah. See, again, we've heard all about this. Remember a couple years ago, the bloodbaths at DC with all those upper echelon people? Again, here it's coming home to roost, folks. All this stuff's been going on that they've tried to just brush under the rug and just gaslight you. Oh, comics are doing great. This is the real truth. If someone had been making a concerted effort to dismantle DC Comics, they couldn't have been more surgical. Luckily, DC still has talented execs like Marie Javins, Jim Lee, and Ann DePies. Yeah, I'd question exactly how talented they are. And the rest of the staff who have thwarted those plans. And from what we're hearing, 2024 will see more moves to reverse this concerning trend. So, it tells you this is what's really, like, this whole thing is what's really happening in the mainstream comic book industry, despite all the stuff they tell you, despite telling you, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist if you believe this kind of stuff, and yet here it is. Like, yes, and even the people who you would say could be talented, like, I would say, yeah, Jim Lee is talented, but as an administrator, definitely not. He's been horrible for DC. He's been horrible. He should go back to drawing books and let people who actually understand business run the business. Continue on. In case you're looking at the above as concerning, it is. Yeah, you see, I like how I had to put in parentheses for you, because he's trying to, again, look at, even here, he's trying to downplay as much as he can how bad this actually is. But even he has to admit, yeah, it's bad. This is not good news. Don't forget the flip side. As I was looking over this list, I was truly astounded by some of the sales totals, especially given where we started out with this 21 years ago. Even books that came out years ago are still selling. For instance, Johnny Christmas's NBC shortlisted Swim Team sold 46,000 copies. Jerry Craft's New Kid, despite constantly banning and controversy, sold more than 750 copies. The most banned book in America for 2 years running, Gender Queer, sold 31,000 copies. That's again more gaslighting. It was not banned. It's being removed from elementary school libraries for kids, who were like 8, 9, 10. They should not be reading this stuff. It's not banned. If it was banned, nobody would have it. You couldn't get it on Amazon. You couldn't get it at your local library. You couldn't get it at a bookstore, but you can. So that's, again, more gaslighting, not banned. It is controversial, yes, but it's not banned. And it wasn't just controversy that sold. El Defo by C.C. Bell sold 25,000 copies. Ty Bui's wonderful memoir, The Best We Could Do, which came out in 2017, sold nearly 10,000 copies. That's more than any book published by Marvel Comics. So a guy's memoir-type comic book sold more than anything published by Marvel Comics. This backlist success and growth is so important. These are just a few titles that caught my eye, and there are many more from other creators to take note of as you read this analysis. So, again, here it is. People you've never, like those books I listed, aside from Gender Queer, again, because of its controversy, I hadn't heard any of these books. I don't know about any of those. They if you were to tell me what they were, I'd be like, I don't know. And yet they all outsold anything Marvel published. And again, this is back stock. This isn't even like something like, well, these came out this year, or I guess with this is 2023. These came out last year with all the Marvel stuff, and they beat it. No, the Marvel stuff today they're putting out, this stuff from 2017 and 2016, and is beating it out. What more damning evidence do you need of how bad the current stuff in the mainstream American comic market is, when stuff from 7 years ago is outselling the new stuff they're putting out right now? Marvel and DC publishing need to be all fired and experienced publishers brought in, ones who care about the characters and yes. What we need, like Kick, my friend, we need Denny O'Neil. That's what we need. We need the Denny O'Neils, the Archie Goodwins, the Mark Gruenwalds, the Stan Lees, the people who actually cared about creating great entertainment and great product, that would entertain a mass audience. These guys understood that. Sadly, they're all no longer with us, though, and there's nobody to replace them with. Like I said, who we got? Jim Lee, C.B. Cebulski? Come on, that's... Yeah, I know. Jim Shooter and Roy Thomas, they do too. But again, they're no spring chickens, my friend. I mean, so you got to go to 70-something-year-old guys who are on the short timers list of be sticking around. I mean, who do you think the next ones to go are going to be? Probably going to be Jim Shooter and Roy Thomas. So, yeah, all the men who made the comics industry the juggernaut it used to be, where they could sell tens, hundreds of thousands, even millions of copies. The people who understood business, who understood how to make the product sell, they're all gone, or they're old men who have retired. There is nobody to replace them. There's nobody in their 30s or 40s out there who's going to do what they do, except, maybe somebody like Eric July. I mean, that guy, he knows how to sell, but ain't nobody wanting to listen to him either. So, it doesn't, yeah, if the young ones are interested, if they want to listen, if they want to learn. See, because that's the other piece of the pie here is, a lot of these younger people are very or like they're ideologues, or they're just they believe what they believe, and anything you say to the contrary is just bigotry or evil. It's problematic. So what good would it do for a Jim Shooter to try to train some 20 or 30 something guys about how to sell comics when they're looking at it and going, oh, that's just a bunch of bigotry to think that? It's not going to go anywhere. The trend for print books in general, not just looking at comics, through bookstores in 2023 appears to be a general drop of 2.6%. For the first time in 9 years, comics material is significantly underperforming the general book market. You can determine the direct relevance of this year. There you are. Comics material is significantly underperforming the general book market. So among all books, comic book related stuff, specifically from the direct market, is underperforming everything else. Again, how much more evidence do you need how bad things are? Depending on your exact definition of intended audiences, it appears that 16 of the top 20 is intended for children or middle readers. Another five of the top 22 are manga. And if you are looking for a Marvel DC superhero comic that was generated for the direct market, you are looking at Watchmen, coming in at item number 305 for about 24,000 sold. Watchmen. Nearly a 40-year-old series. It's 4 decades old. And that's the best that gets into the list is Watchmen. I mean, I guess as I was reading all this stuff from Brian Hibbs, it's like I just kept, just nodding my head, going, "Yeah, we told you. Yeah, we said this was coming. Yeah, yeah." There's like no shock over here. I mean, you see the way he's writing this is almost like he's kind of like almost shocked that he has to say this stuff, and yet, and again, any of us who've been paying attention, we all know this was pretty much destined. As for Marvel, their very first appearance isn't until way down at number 557 with Spider-Punk, about 12,000 copies. There are higher placing superheroes, for example, Teen Titans Robin debuts at 194, which is an original graphic novel. Only Miles Morales' Shockwaves from Scholastic had a great sophomore year, coming in at 197, placing both of those in the 30K band. But neither Marvel nor DC appear to be having much meaningful traction with pretty much anything they are publishing as contemporary periodicals. So basically what that means is almost anything they're doing that's the new stuff, nobody's interested. You got to go back 40 years to Watchmen to find something that people are willing to buy. And again, I've shown you in past streams, where I've shown you like monthly totals of stuff. And you see it's all dominated by manga. And then when we cut down to the subgenre of superhero graphic novels, what do you see? You see Watchmen. You see, the Killing Joke. You see, Batman Year One. Stuff like this. It's like 30, 40, 50-year-old stuff. It's not the new stuff. Where's all the new stuff? Where are all the great new classics that we're all going to love and enjoy in 20 or 30 years? The way we do a Watchmen, the way you do a Killing Joke. Where are those classics today? And this tells you there are none. The last 10 to 15 years is just a barren wasteland of garbage. And this right here is all the proof you really need to spotlight that. I mean, I guess you could. But again, like I said, it just depends on who, on their mindset. Because if they're not of the right mindset, all your knowledge will fall on deaf ears. And now we're going to get a little more into, the numbers here, of how they're performing overall. And it goes, if you look at the entirety of all Circana BookScan reported numbers for the total of 38,597 distinct Western comics, things look generally like this. There are 2,158 publisher imprints listed in the 2023 chart, but only 13 of them managed to capture 1% or more of the market. And as we look at this, there it is. He said Scholastics is far and away, Penguin Random House, HarperCollins. Here's DC Comics, 5%. Marvel, 4%. Dark Horse, 3%. IDW, 3%. Image, 3%. I mean, you can see how tiny the mainstream is. And even when you pull them all together, 5, 9, and 9, 18, it's barely getting past Penguin Random House. And even that, it can't touch Scholastic. Scholastic is still, it's more than double all the mainstream added together. This is how bad things are. He goes, this is not quite as lopsided as the manga chart, but it is still a bit overwhelming that one publisher is 39% of all graphic novels sold. And note that Marvel and DC combined are under 10% in the book market. And there you go. There it is. This is it. So whenever in the future, if they drag out that IVC2 bar graph saying, look, 2.2 billion, better than ever, comics are doing great. Grab a copy of this, folks. Screen cap it, whatever you got to do. Get a copy of this like I have, and then throw this one out to them and go, no, this is actually what's going on, my friend. This is actually what's going on. This is the counter to all their nonsense. So for the good news, they at least placed a single book in the top 750. Hooray! But this seems paltry when you see that at least 4 other publishers licensed to Marvel Comics, Viz with manga Spider-Man, Disney with Spidey and His Amazing Friends, Scholastic with Miles Morales Shockwave, and Abrams with Spider-Man Animals Assemble, beat every single comic Marvel itself published, while Penguin's reprint of Penguin Classics Amazing Spider-Man at 9,822 beat them all except for Marvel's #1 bestseller. So, again, there it is. Even people who are doing a Marvel character that are not Marvel producing it themselves are doing better than Marvel does. Which, again, just goes to something else we've always said is we need to get these creations in the hands of people who care, of people who actually want to see these creations succeed. And you can see there are those out there, evidently, who do want that to happen. It's just not Marvel. If nearly everyone can do better than you selling your characters, it makes one wonder why you're still in the publishing business. Even more so, Marvel's bookstore distribution switched from Hachette to Penguin Random House on April 1st of 2022. So they've had nearly a year to see if new distribution could change their trajectory, and it's very, very hard to say that it is. So there it is. Again, something we've all been talking about. It's been buzzing in the background. How long before the mainstream publishers stop being publishers and they just license out the characters to someone else to do them? Yeah, let IDW, let Viz, let them produce the comics. We'll just hold the licensing and the IPs, and we'll get our money, and they can do all the hard work of like getting creators and paying them and setting up a publishing house and blah blah blah. How long? I mean, this tells you it's coming. It's coming. I don't see a way around it. The Marvel comics that you and I grew up with, the DC comics you and I grew up with, they're not going to be around. 10, 20 years from now, they're not going to be around. They're going to be licensed out to somebody else because the companies are going to, the big parent companies, Disney and Warner Discovery or whoever owns them at the time, they're all going to look at this and go, this is just a loss leader. This is losing money. And with how bad everything is across the board, again, movies, theme parks, video games, all these different entertainment, outlets are all hurting right now. I mean, you see it in the news all the time. I mean, this company let this many people go, and that company let that many people go, and all the corporations are now looking for things to cut. They're looking for things to get rid of. And this here tells you that, it's how long do you think the publishing arm of Marvel and DC Comics have, given this kind of a performance? Try to tell them. Once again, let's state the obvious. Marvel is literally synonymous with the very idea of comics for a meaningful percentage of the American population. They have utterly dominated pop culture for multiple years here, and the source material of comics is actually usually better realized than the various bits stolen by the adaptations. Plus, on top of that, they have Star Wars. It is absolutely incomprehensible to this observer that they are not entirely dominating the sales of Western comics to adults, and yet they can only sell a single book into the market at over 10,000 copies. My considered opinion says to me, someone isn't doing their job. Gee, do you think, Brian? Do you think? Gee, I wonder who's been saying that for several years now. Oh, yeah, it's all of us here on YouTube and Rumble and BitChute and all of us who do these live streams and make videos and talk about this stuff. I've been talking about it for years. Yeah, we've been telling you that. And, Hibbs and a lot of others, they've been hiding their head in the sand, hiding behind the ICV2 graph. Oh, comics are doing better than ever. And now, again, like I said, this is what it is. The truth has become so apparent. It's so in your face, they can't even gaslight anymore. It's possible, I suppose, that they're making it all up in the direct market. But since there are no longer any sales charts to establish this, and since I know so many retailers who run fairly specifically Marvel-driven stores who are complaining incessantly about the drops in sales of Marvel periodicals, I'm going to strongly doubt that is actually the case. Yes. And again, you're going to see in here just how disconnected the people in charge are from the people on the ground like that. You're going to see that coming up here. But again, take note of these little moments here. These are important. It's too bad. A strong comics market could really, really use a strong Marvel that leads the market. Instead, we are stuck with leadership that doesn't appear to have any vision besides just following trends, and not even doing that especially well. It makes me sad. Not me, because it's what they deserve. This is the route they chose. Again, we warned them. We pleaded with them. We begged them. Don't do this. Stop destroying your characters. Stop annoying the audience. Stop calling them bigots and telling them we don't want your money, you Nazis. Stop doing these things. Stop pushing away the people who pay the bills. Stop, listening to social activists telling you what to do. Stop this stuff and go back to doing what you did in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. Just stop. Stop doing this nonsense and go back to what you did when you were relevant. And they didn't want to listen. And now here we are. And so while it might make Brian Hibbs sad, I'm not sad. I feel vindicated. I'm in the I told you so camp. Because all of this was preventable. It was all completely preventable. And they chose not to do it. For ideological reasons or for false beliefs in the supposed quote-unquote modern audiences, the new audiences are going to replace our old one with, whatever their reasoning was. And they brought this on themselves. So it's not just Brian Hibbs, though, who's speaking out with some truth. Here's Rob Salkowitz from ICV2, who did a little thing here. He goes, buy the book. Dollar signs or danger signs for comics in the latest book scan figures. Now, here's his take on all of this. He talks about Hibbs' thing, his analysis. Hibbs did his usual painstakingly thorough job grinding through all the categories and sales figures to dig out a few headlines. Namely, that Scholastic remains the leader by such a margin that you'd have to rescale the sales chart to see anyone else. And that DC and Marvel Comics have simply vanished from the book market for all intents and purposes. There's also another story about the market for adult graphic novels being driven much more by back catalog than by front list, which in less industry jargon. We're saying is like the older stuff is selling is what's driving graphic novel sales for the adult market, not the new stuff that's coming out. It's the Dark Knight Returns that sells. It's not, Dark Knight's Metal. That's what they're saying. All these trends raise a couple of questions, considering the importance of the bookstore channel to the overall health of comics publishing. Does Scholastic's success help anyone but Scholastic? The first thing that jumps off the spreadsheet is how complete Scholastic's dominance of the marketplace has become. The company owns the top 9 slots and 16 of the top 20, driven by the maniacal force of Kidlit that is Dave Pilkey, according to Hibbs' chart, which does not include the graphic novelish edge case of Jeff Kinney's retired Wimpy Kid franchise, whatever. So yeah, there it is. So that's a good question right here. Does Scholastic success help anyone but Scholastic? And I would say, looking at the charts, looking at what we've seen, no. The only ones that's helping is Scholastic. Again, this is what Marvel and DC believed when they threw over their audience, when they told us to go fuck ourselves because, we're just a bunch of bigots and we don't want your money, Nazis. The famous Kelly Sue DeConnick, if you don't like my politics, don't buy my book. Problem solved. When they were telling us all that, they thought, well, we got Scholastics. We'll make money there. And now it's looking like, well, no, the success they're seeing isn't really helping them. It like I said, if it wasn't so self-inflicted and they weren't such colossal jackasses about it all these years, you might almost feel bad for them. Continuing. But more than 15 years in Scholastic-led explosion of young reader graphic novels, it's worth asking if this is doing the wider industry or even the medium of comics much good. It's certainly not awesome for the other publishers angling for younger readers who are getting ground into pace by Scholastic's total market dominance. But more fundamentally, we seem to have come full circle from comics aren't just for kids anymore to comics seem to be just for grown-ups now. And is anyone but kids buying graphic novels in big numbers? Yeah. Again, very well put. There's been a lot written about the differences in generational audiences for comics, including some by me, which again we'll see some more from Rob here after this. It's very important. But one thing that has received less attention is the impression left on kids as they age up. For many in my Gen X cohorts, and for the boomers before us raised on EC and Marvel Silver Age material, some comic stories seem slightly more sophisticated than average kid lit, especially ones that required some awareness of the wider world. It was a rite of passage to progress from Archie and Richie Rich to Detective Comics and X-Men. That's true. That's a very good point. I actually agree with this point. Yes, there did seem to be that there was like levels of how you are in comics. You start at a lower level and you work your way up. And then when you finally get to read these, like, wow, these blow me away because they were, at least on the surface, it seems more sophisticated than the stuff you'd been reading before. And having those different tiers helped to grow the base. And that's why you had people who would still continue to buy, as he put it, Detective Comics and X-Men well into their 20s and their 30s and 40s because of that pseudo sophistication in how they tiered out the work. But they don't do that anymore. By feeding the endless appetite of preschoolers and elementary school kids with material that is wonderfully, proudly, unabashedly juvenile, have current kid-oriented graphic novels cemented the medium itself as an artifact of early youth, something to be left behind at a certain point in development? Yes. I think it has. I truly do. Again, this is another part of the problem in how they market. They don't understand it. These people in charge now do not understand what those people who I was talking about with leg kick understood. They understood of we want to keep the stuff accessible to the youngest audience because they're the bread and butter. Because you always want new people coming in. You got to replace because people, as painful as it is to admit, Heidi McDonald even has a point. At some point, an audience is going to age and die out. That will happen. So you got to make sure you keep the numbers replenished. So you got to keep it open to the young, but yet you have to do it in such a way to keep it engaging for people as they age, so that they want to stick around for longer periods of time. And then as they get older, of course, they're going to have more disposable income, which means they'll probably buy even more product. And then on top of that, they'll have kids of their own, and then they'll introduce them to the comics and hopefully bring in the next generation that way. Hey, I remember these great Spider-Man comics when I was growing up. Let me get some for my kid so he can enjoy them too. This used to be something they understood, and they don't now because they're so filled with ideology and political agendas, they can't see the forest for the trees. And that's how you end up with what he's talking about here, where, all the work now seems to be aimed directly at the youngest. And then as soon as those young readers come of age, as I guess you could say, they see it as a relic of their past. Well, I'm over that. Like just like when you're a kid, there's certain things you do as a kid, toys you play with, or games you would play. And then as you got older, when you started to discover girls and music and, other stuff, all those things you did as a kid sort of fell by the wayside. Oh, that's just a relic of my youth. To where the point you're at now as an adult, and you're just looking at it like, yeah, that was kid fare. And that's how you see it. And and he's saying that's what's happening now in the book market, is all this stuff that is so great for that youngest audience, but yet there's no sophistication to it that can keep an older reader engaged. And so it becomes where Scholastics is so dominating everything that they've squeezed out everybody else. And it's like, it's just this one group we want, and we don't care about anybody else. And the people who should be caring about that, as he said, the Marvels and DCs and stuff, don't seem to care about that. And that's because we have incompetent people who are either ideologically and politically bound to certain narratives, and so they can't break it, or they're too afraid of the ones who are. And so they just sit in silence and just go along with it. And this is what's brought us to where we are. Continuing, there's certainly no clear path from Dogman to almost anything sold periodically in the direct market, despite plenty of hopes and efforts spent attempting to build those bridges. There was never any guarantee how many of those readers would carry over, but after this long, it seems increasingly clear that the number is not that much greater than the number of kids who developed into lifelong direct market customers through any other on-ramp. There you go. This is what they did. They put all their eggs into this basket thinking this is what was going to do it, and now it's just turning out that it's not producing the results they want, and they have no plan B. Like I said, this is why you can see in maybe 10 years there will not be a Marvel Comics publisher arm. There will not be a DC Comics publishing arm. They'll be farmed out to somebody else. This is what happens when you throw over one audience thinking you're going to get another, and then that new audience doesn't show up. Have the big two given up on trade book market? One of the most disappointing tidbits in the sales charts is the complete disappearance of DC and Marvel, which together account for under 10% of total non-manga books in 2023. Hibbs has completely discussed this in his write-up, but there's one observation I would add. Collecting story arcs as trade books used to represent a reasonable way for publishers and creators to recoup the cost of ongoing and limited series that went into sales decay after the first issue. The predictability of these moves may have hurt in the midterm by inculcating the wait for trade mentality among readers, but in the long run, having these stories in print and widely available was a selling point. To the extent this remains part of the game plan, it appears to be so DM-centric as to make the current or recent trade practically invisible outside of comic shops. Nearly all the sales are dominated by the perennial backlist bestsellers from decades past like Watchmen, Dark Knight Returns, and Sandman. Marvel, as Hibbs noted, is a complete no-show, outdone by its licensing partners. There you go. Again, this is the outcome. This is the outcome of all the choices they have been making for the last decade, at least. They don't care about the comic shops. They don't care about the comic readers. They thought they were going to go into bookstores, and then we're going to get all these new readers, and whatever we lose from the direct market, well, we'll make that up in all those book guy sales. And now they're not seeing those book sales, and they don't know what to do. He says, to the extent this remains part of the game plan. So he's not even sure they even have a game plan. And I don't think they do. Will 2024 be one for the books? Over the last decade, we've seen the balance of power shift from the direct market to the bookstore, largely on the back of manga and Scholastic. But like so much else in the world right now, the rising tide needs to raise at least a few more boats. Yes. See, again, this is what I'm saying. This is why when they're constantly champing at the bit with that IVC2 bar graph, 2.2 billion, best sales numbers ever. Comics are doing great. Don't listen to the charlatan con men on YouTube. This is the real truth. Scholastic and manga are doing great. Yeah, that's great for them. But is it helping out the direct comic book market? No. Again, I've said this before, like when you had all the creators on here on social media attacking readers, calling them every dirty name in the book. It's like, do you think that you're just going to transfer over to manga or some other, some young adult stuff from Scholastic? They're just going to bring you on. You're going to get your job there? No? Then, what are you going to do when the direct market fails? Because all of this that you see in these two articles I've just read from you all points to the fact that the direct market is failing. It's not just bad. It's not just really bad. It's not even on life support. It's in hospice. It's no longer a question of if it's going to fall. It's just a question of when. When's it going to happen? Because you already see it in the shops. How many true comic shops are really out there in the world? And by true comic shops, I mean ones that just basically they carry comics and trades and almost nothing else. Maybe there's some, comic book trading cards on a shelf somewhere or something. Maybe they got a couple toys up there on the shelf. But by and large, all it is like 95% comics and, graphic novels. How many true comic shops like that are out there right now? Very few. Most comic shops are basically you call them like nerd stores, because you got Funko Pops and statues and Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh and all these other things that are at best ancillary to the comics. It's a comic shop that doesn't focus on comics. And again, look at a lot of the comic shows, the conventions. There's a lot of cosplay and media stars and movie stars and video game stuff. And where are the comics? Well, they're pushed into a back corner. They're a second-class citizen at their own show. These are warning signs. When you see stuff like that happening, that's a warning sign that your industry isn't healthy. And no one has been paying attention to this. They've just been brushing it off, calling you a bigot, saying, shut up, we don't want to hear what you got to say. And now look at where we are. Look at where we are. But as I said, Rob has some other things to say in the not too distant past. Here he is, the top comic business stories of 2022. And, here he is doom and glooming over what he saw in Hibbs's article this year. But where was he 2 years ago? Oh, well, look at this. Oh, 2022, where did you go? All of a sudden, it's time to look in the rearview mirror for the highlights, lowlights, and flashing red lights of the past 12 months. And he goes, North American comic sales top 2 billion. See, there it is. There it is. This is what they were saying just a couple years ago. Oh, comics are doing better than ever. $2 billion. Let's start off with the good news. It's raining money. Okay, technically that all happened in 2021, but we didn't know about it for sure until 2022, so I'm putting it on this year's list. Most growth resulted, as usual, from big increases in sales of younger reader graphic novels and manga. Again, what did he just get done saying in the previous one? These were the only places where there was any real strength in the market. But the high tide lifted all boats. Did it? Did it? Or was it a mirage? Early word is that 2022 sustained that momentum, although it's unlikely that the once-in-a-lifetime double-digit increases of the magnitude we saw in 2021 are in the offing. So, this is how they try to soft shoot now. Oh, well, those are pandemic sales, and we can't really say that was a one-off event, and blah, blah, blah. This is how they're trying to soft shoot some of this. Considering the state of the industry at the start of the 2010s, when the recession, the collapse of borders, and numerous other uncertainties clouded the picture, the past decade has been a march of triumph for the comic business, both economically and culturally. Are you fucking kidding me, Rob? Are you fucking kidding me? And now here you are 2 years later saying, man, it looks like, that we could be seeing the end of like the mainstream publishers. My, what a difference 48 months makes, huh? The sales growth numbers reported in 2022 were splashed across the screens of a lot of investors' presentations aimed at attracting new players into the space. The streaming wave crests. 2022 saw the media assembly line, which had stalled out during the pandemic, disgorge a backlog of comics-related projects onto screens large and small. Disney gave us Moon Knight, She-Hulk, and a couple of new additions to the Star Wars canon, and a clutch of middling Phase 4 movies. HBO hit us with Peacemaker, new seasons of Titans, and a thoroughly bonkers Doom Patrol. Netflix made fans' dreams come true with Sandman. And The Boys continued their reign of terror on Amazon Prime, among other highlights. But this history is likely to show 2022 as the high watermark for original big-budget streaming content, at least in the near term. And boy, is that not true. What was last year? What did they nickname last year? The year of the flopbuster. All the movies that bombed, all the TV shows that bombed, all the streaming that bombed. They're losing hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. What is Disney's like 1.5 billion on their streaming platform alone? COVID-era viewing patterns reverted back to normal, and the stock market punished companies that had gotten over their skis in terms of greenlighting marginal projects. Blood ran through the executive corridors of Disney, Warner Media, DC Entertainment, and Netflix Animation with another wave of leadership and strategic changes. This bodes ill for late-arriving publishers whose entire business model was based on using comics as templates for streaming IP, and is sad news for creators with projects that got squeezed out in the crunch. Now, again, this is 2 years ago, and he's talking about streaming, and what do you see now? They're saying the same thing pretty much about the books themselves. Manga and Scholastics are dominating and squeezing everybody else out. Can you see what's going on here? And again, this was 2 years ago, but you saw him. He was championing, oh, the money is flowing in comics. It's so great. It was the 2020s have been a time of great financial and cultural success for comics. And now here we are 48 months later, and he's saying, like, my God, Marvel and DC suck. They can't sell anything. They're new. The only thing they can sell is stuff that's 30, 40, 45 years old. That's the only stuff that sells for them in the book markets. Nobody's buying the new stuff. Like I said, what a difference 48 months can make. And, again, the stories continue. Here we are. More layoffs at IDW. IDW underwent another round of layoffs today. The Beat has learned, with 5 people being let go. And to tell you the people who were gone. And the Beat has learned that other layoffs include, COO Amber Herta, who was promoted to the position in last May's reorganization of the company. Other cuts include personnel in the HR department and entertainment. The layoffs follow special projects editor Scott Dunbar leaving the company, as announced earlier this week. Reached for comment, IDW sent this statement. IDW did make the tough but strategic decision to reduce 5 positions today. This is part of a strategy to create a more efficient IDW, and one that will be better able to delight fans for years to come. We are grateful for the years of commitment and hard work, and wish abundant success to those affected. Just a pretty much canned response, like, yeah, we had to let these people go because, well, we're not selling, but we're going to redouble our efforts. And, and I just love that whole thing about, be better able to delight fans for years and years to come. I'm sorry, have they not been listening to people for the last 10 years who've told them their stuff sucks? Which is why they lost the G.I. Joe and Transformers licensing. It's why the only thing they've sold that has been worth a damn in the last, 5-7 years has been Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle: The Last Ronin, which are trying to run that in the ground now because they've got nothing else. Does that sound like somebody who's looking to delight fans for years and years to come? IDW has been reorganized, has been in reorganization mode since last April, when it radically cut staff and delisted its stock. As many as 40% of staff was let go in a mass Zoom meeting in one day, including former publisher, whoever. Following this, the company reorganized with, again, another person I don't care about. Late August, last August, they shut down the original line and attempt to develop more IP controlled by the company. So again, this is what's happening. All these companies, all these publishers, they put all these eggs in these baskets thinking, we don't need the old audience. This is all we've heard. We don't need you bigots anymore. This isn't for you. Remember those lines we've heard for years? This work isn't for you. Kelly Sue DeConnick, if you don't like my politics, don't buy my book. And where has it gotten them? But like I said, while we're seeing the truths coming out now, that they can no longer be hidden, there's still those who want to still try to gaslight as much as they can. And one of those people is Marvel president Dan Buckley. And here he was the keynote speaker at the recent Comics Pro meeting. And I thought I'd go regale you with some of the stuff he said, which, when you think about what he says, it shows you just how out of touch he is with what's actually happening. He goes, "Thank you for having me, and a special thank you to Jen Haynes. It's been a pleasure meeting you, and we really appreciate what you're doing for the industry. I'm here today to remind you of how essential retailers are to us, to the community of comic fans, and the future of our industry." Now, take note of that sentence right there, because you're going to see some stuff coming up that's going to put that to the test. A little over a year ago, we realized that we were unsure of where we actually were from an industry and company perspective. Yes, we know our own sales numbers, but we needed context to actually set a meaningful course forward. Working with the team here at Comics Pro and others, we've been committed to finding better ways for all of us to continue improving and standardizing access to that data again. He's talking about how we no longer see the numbers anymore. Between the breakup, where people left Diamond and they're no longer being the dominant one, and then of course companies now hiding those numbers so that nobody knows what they are, which just instills you with such confidence. They must be so good that they can't show them. These are ongoing conversations. It will take some time, but I'm confident that as we grow, we will be able, as a group, we will be able to pull together the data we need in the short and long term to help make the right impact for everyone in this room. Basically saying, yeah, we're going to try to see if we can figure out a way to know what the numbers are, but we're going to we got to talk about it and work it out, because we don't want to be out there where people can actually figure out what's actually happening. We will be able to spin them. That's all he means. Product, at least to me, is the one that is in all caps and in bold. If the core product does not deliver, then pricing, placement, and promotion have little effect on the long-term success of any offering. Oh, so what that's basically saying is quality. That's basically what that said. He's saying quality of the content matters. If we don't have quality content, nothing else really matters, because no one's going to care. Gee, that seems kind of funny when I think about what we've said for the last several years to them is stop putting out this shitty content, put out content that we actually want to read, put out content that we actually want to buy. It's funny how, as I read through this stuff, I can keep hearing all the things I and others have said for years and years and years. Where was Dan Buckley the last decade? Did he have his head up his ass sniffing his own farts? Because that's the only thing I can think. So we're going to start with core product, comics. We are very proud of how our editorial and creative teams performed during the pandemic, but we knew we needed to get everyone back together. The recent reestablishment of face-to-face conversations and editorial retreats has reinvigorated a collaborative environment that has always defined Marvel. The retreats by themselves have elevated Civil War World War Hulk, Death of Captain America, Miles Morales, The Spider-Verse, Superior Spider-Man, and the Krakoa Age of X, to name a few. How many of these are horrible storylines? The Death of Captain America, nobody liked that. Superior Spider-Man, nobody liked that. The Krakoa Age of X-Men, it just ended. People are saying how horrible it was. Again, this is how out of touch he is with what's actually going on. One of the key mantras of these meetings is making sure that we ask each creative team why this story matters and what could be the outcome of this story that leads to the next organically exciting story. Oh, I don't know. Why don't you ask Robert Kirkman about how you ended the Age of Krakoa on him? Because I certainly don't think that's the way he wanted things to end. You know, I love that they're trying to play up this thing that, like, well, we just got to make some real, got to talk to you so we can have really good content and create it. You're not creating good content. That's the point. The people you're talking to don't know how to make good content. That's the point. Basically, the discipline here is to make sure that the creative is taking the lead and that marketing and sales are enhancing the results. That's why those aforementioned projects were so successful. Retailers and readers know when something is creatively driven. Yes, they do. That's why retailers are complaining about all the damn variant covers and retailer incentive, exclusive stuff that's, forcing them to pick up books that they don't want to buy because they know they can't sell them. But is Marvel stopping with any of that? No. Readers are telling them how bad the works are. Are they listening to those people? No. Yes, retailers and readers know when something is creatively driven. And we know that for the last several years, Marvel and DC and pretty much most of the mainstream has not been creatively driven. And what did they say when we told them this? Shut up, bigots. Now on to the next point, price. We know that pricing is an area where we need to adjust to fit your needs. We want to make it consistent for you and for your customers. The bulk of the line will be $3.99 with new number ones and 8 to 10 core titles with top talent and characters being priced at $4.99. There will be exceptions for event books, one-shots, and anniversary books, but you will also see more consistent pricing approach to those offerings. So basically what he's saying is, yeah, we're just going to price it however the hell we want. I mean, that's all that says. Now, if it was me, I'd be like, you know what? We're gonna make every book $2.99. Even if it's a number one, everything, miniseries, event books, one-shots, all those going to be $2.99 per book. We're going to limit the number of books we do. We're not going to do more than 20 books in a month. We're going to cover all our core characters. And then we'll see how things go from there. And if we can get good sales on this stuff, then we'll think about expanding further. But right now, we're just going to go back to the basics, back to the core, back to the very heart of what this is, and we're going to keep it the way it was, when kids and people read comics in the hundreds of thousands and millions. All the books the same price. No fancy gimmicks. No stupid incentives. No variant nonsense. Just good quality comics at an affordable price for both retailer and reader. That's what you would say. He says none of this. $4 a book, except for number ones and one-shots, event books, and anniversary books. So pretty much what they're doing right now. That's what he's saying. It's pretty much what we're doing. What we're doing right now, we're just going to keep doing this. It shows you how seriously they take this. Now on to promotion and placement. These two are inseparable in our industry. Our promotions are focused where the bulk of our comics are placed, the direct market. The marketing and sales teams have reestablished closer ties to the editorial and creative teams to ensure we are pulling the proper PR and digital marketing levers that were, quite frankly, not coordinated as well as they could have been over the past couple of years. Again, hiding behind the pandemic. Oh, it's just the pandemic's fault. That's all. It was just the pandemic that screwed everything up. It's not because we all made a bunch of mistakes that we don't know what we're doing. It's not because we're not focusing on creating quality content and letting our creatives go out there and assault the reader base and call them bigots and tell them we don't want your money, Nazis, and go out there raping our retail buddies with variant covers and exclusive incentives that are causing them to spend money they don't have and putting them out of business. No. It's just a pandemic. That's all just a pandemic. We are also all working much more closely with Marvel Studios to draw up excitement for comics relating to major studio events. This coordination is specific to each studio offering and sometimes even leads to surprises like the unplanned recent post on social media from Ryan Reynolds for the upcoming Deadpool and Wolverine World War III by Joe Kelly and Adam Kubert. So, again, I've said this many times. Comics, one of the biggest mistakes these people make is trying to compete with other forms of entertainment. Comics cannot compete with movies and television, and they cannot compete with video games. You can't do decompressed storytelling in a comic and make it effective the way you can in, say, a movie where you have a bunch of people sitting around a table talking. Because there you have body language, inflection of tone, facial expressions, things you can use to forward progression in the story, to forward a mood that you can't get from a static image in a comic. And then, of course, they can't compete with video games because video games are much more interactive. You're not watching or reading a story about another character that you're trying to, think about. You are the character in the video game. You are making the character do all the stuff they do in the game. You are making them do. You are in control. You don't have that in a comic. So to say we're going to work with these other outlets, no, don't. That's one of the mistakes that you've been making for years. What you need to do is look at the movies and say, what are they doing? Oh, they're strip mining all this stuff from the past when these comics were great. Maybe we need to make our comics great like that again. That's what you should focus on. That should be the answer here. Not, let's try to work in tandem so we can work together with the movies and we'll try to bombard people with, no, that's not going to work. Because what if the movie bombs? Who's going to want to buy the comic? And again, you can do things in a movie that you can't do in a comic. So it's not going to work anyway. See, they got to stop trying to compete and connect themselves with other forms of entertainment and focus on what makes comics so special. The things that comics does well. The things that comics can do that the other forms can't. That's where your focus should be. And of course, the main focus of all should be on quality product above all else. Because, it doesn't matter what the movies are doing. If you aren't making stuff that people want to read, then they're never going to buy it anyway. It is a priority for Marvel Comics to leverage the power of Marvel Studios to generate awareness, trial, and traffic with the intent to convert those MCU fans into customers for you. Except, when have you ever done that? Again, I'm someone who's worked in comic shops. I remember when the first Spider-Man movie from Sony came out. And I think there was some special, I think it might have been a free comic book day Spider-Man comic that came out that year, right in time for the movie. And I remember that the owner of the store bought like an extra 1,000 copies or some ungodly number like that of that book. And then put it in a bag with a flyer for a sale he was going to have at the store that day, that weekend for free comic book day, and a little coupon on it for his store. And then he took all these books and gave them to the local theater to give out to the people on the first showing of the Spider-Man movie. In the hopes that, they'll get this book, they'll read it, they'll think it's awesome, and then they'll want to come into the shop the next day. That's Friday. Then they'll want to come in the shop on Saturday on free comic book day, and they'll bring their coupons, and we got very few of those coupons back. And that free comic book day was, maybe slightly more traffic than a normal Saturday, but not by some vast amount. And this is us kind of doing what he's talking about here, leveraging the movie to generate awareness and traffic to the comic stores. And it didn't work. You know what happened? People got that free comic, they took it because, oh, it's free, and then they probably threw it away when they got home. Or they, threw it down somewhere and forgot about it. They certainly didn't say, oh, I better get up tomorrow and go into the comic book shop. That didn't happen. Because, see, what guys like Dan Buckley never seem to get is that it's much easier to get somebody to get off their ass to go to a movie theater and watch a movie that they can just sit there and zone out on than have them get off their ass, go to a comic shop, and then spend money and then have to go back home and actually physically hold and read the book in their hands. A lot of people today are lazy as fuck. And they don't want to have to think. They don't want to have to do a lot of work. Just give me my remote, I'll push the button, and then that's it. Instant gratification. And that's not the experience you're going to get at a comic store. So they have no interest in seeing, going to check out the comics. Now, again, I'm not saying everybody. We did get back some of those coupons, but compared to the amount we gave out, not very many. So, again, mistakes of the past continue to be made even in the future now. That's what he's saying. Well, the things we did in the past that didn't work, we're going to do them again. It's always easier to sell people who want to buy right away than to convert a new customer. We're going to work on both, but we need to get people back. Well, that's basically saying it's easier to sell to somebody who's already interested in comics than it is to sell a comic to somebody who has no interest in comics. And yeah, that's true. But he's going to work on having both. How are you going to do that, Dan? How are you going to make people have interest in something they don't have interest in? People will go see a movie even if they're not all that interested in it because there's very little work involved for them, and it's something they'll probably talk about over the water cooler on Monday. And they don't want to be left out, so they'll go see the movie. Who's going into work on Monday saying, hey, man, did you read that latest issue of X-Men? Hey, man, did you read that latest issue of The Punisher? Who's doing that? Unless they work in a comic shop, that is. Nobody. I mean, again, this shows you the ineptitude of the people in charge. Last and most important, we need to have some fun and look to the future. I'm not saying they were going to shut down the telling of dystopian future stories. They sell. But we at Marvel need to embrace and convey the fun of working with the super talented creators and beloved characters. Except your creators that you have now, unless, they're in their late 50s to 70s, aren't talented. Who's the new talents who are really, really great? Who? Point me out 5 people in the last 10 years who have blown up like, wow, this guy was awesome. Name me 5 people. Who? Daniel Warren Johnson? Okay, maybe him. Who else? So you can't. There aren't there. The talent isn't there. And that's part of the problem the industry is having as a whole now is the talent isn't there because they've left. They've gone on to advertising or, working in video games or, writing copy for somewhere. That's where they've went to. Sometimes because they were driven out. And sometimes because, the shitty page rates and the shitty conditions and the shitty workloads just don't worth it to them. And so they just walk away. And the ones who are truly talented, like, say, a Graham Nolan or an Aaron Lopresti, they're out making their own books now. They don't even want to work in the mainstream. They're making their own stuff where they get 100% of the money, all the rewards, and they get to keep the IPs. So if there ever is a movie for, say, Wraith of God or Ghost of Matacumba Key, guess who gets the money? Yeah, that's right, the creator. And they know they're never going to get that working for Marvel or DC or any of the other major publishers. We need to convey the fun that Stan and so many other creators and editors in this industry since have projected because it is infectious. But you guys don't have that. This is partly what made Stan Lee so unique and irreplaceable. Stan Lee, we all know some of the stories about the supposed things he said and did that was not kosher. But above all else, the one thing you can say about Stan Lee that is irrefutable, he was an excellent ambassador for comics. He knew how to get you excited for comic books. He knew how to market them, he knew how to promote them, and he knew how to excite you about them and get that enthusiasm. There is nobody in the mainstream industry today who can do what Stan Lee did. Not Dan Buckley, not Jim Lee, not C.B. Cebulski, not anybody. So when you couple that with the loss of the men who understood how to market and promote comics, like I said, your Denny O'Neills, your Archie Goodwins, your Mark Gruenwalds, when you factor in those people aren't there and you don't have someone like Stan Lee as your cheerleader, how the hell do you ever expect to make it an infectious thing of fun? You don't know. You don't know how to do fun, Dan. You haven't a fucking clue. I have been lucky enough to sit in the room for the creation of Miles Morales, the genesis of Civil War, and the group conversation with Dan Slott telling him that Superior Spider-Man and Spider-Verse are two separate stories, to let them not breathe and to not tell them at the same time. Yes, he was going to have Doc Ock save the multiverse. How fun is that? Actually, it sounds kind of stupid, actually. Dr. Octopus is a villain. This commitment will present itself in different ways, from the reappearance of bullpen bulletins, Deadpool surprises, and projects like Uncle Scrooge and the Infinity Dime by Jason Aaron. Oh yeah, that's certainly going to be a great read, I'm sure. The fun will attract more readers and help us build an optimistic future. No, it won't. Is there anything in what he just spelled out that has you excited? That has you feeling optimistic for the future? I mean, again, it just shows you how so out of touch he is with the fan base, with the people who care, and that's the thing too, is a lot of the people who may have cared, they don't anymore. They've become apathetic. It's often been said, that these, that the opposite of love is hate. And it's like, no, it's not. Because whether you love something or you hate something, the key in it is you care. You love it because you care about it, and you love it because you want it. Or if you hate it, you care and that's why it annoys you, and it's why you hate it, because you care. No, the opposite of love is apathy. And that's where a lot of the audience is now. They just don't care anymore. This is why you see, again, all the failure last year, the movies and the TV shows. This is why you're seeing, again, they got to tell the truth now about those numbers and the sales, because they aren't coming back. People have walked away after years and years and years of being ridiculed online by creators who thought they were better than them, who thought they were, they thought that they were on the right side of history. My feminazi politics matter more than anything else. These people drove people away and made them no longer care. How do you attract them back? I don't think putting bulletin bullpens and Jason Aaron doing an Uncle Scrooge comic is going to make it happen. We want to recreate that feeling of discovery, your first comic, and get readers genuinely excited for what's hitting the stands each month. We want to reinvigorate the sense of community and belonging that comic shops offer, and the feeling that keeps customers coming back time after time. Except you've done everything to do the opposite of that for the last decade. You've raped your retail partners into bankruptcy. You've driven away your old school audience who did come in every week to the comic shops and were excited for the books. And now that you're in a corner and you've painted yourself there and you see no way out, you want us to come and save you. And it's just not going to happen. We've moved on. You know? And I don't know what more there is to tell, Dan, on that. You're the only people who can really provide that. Yes, the retailers. You know, because they're the real customers. Remember, guys, we're not the customers that you know, we're not the customers for comics. The retailers are. And for that, we thank you. We thank you for being suckers and buying into every one of our schemes and scams to part you from your money and put you into bankruptcy. No matter who you are or where you're from, we are all united by our passion for comic books. From the bustling streets of New York City to a quiet small town spot, your shops serve as a place for fans of all ages to gather and find a community. Your shops are at the center of pop culture, and for many, they're a safe haven and escape from the realities of everyday life. Oh, doesn't that just sound so kumbaya, so beautiful, so heartfelt? Oh, it almost brings a tear to my eye. I mean, maybe it would if I actually thought he believed any of that. But he doesn't. He's mouthing the words, but I can guarantee you he doesn't believe a word of that. Because if he could find a way for them to make money and cut the comic shops out completely, he'd do it in a heartbeat and wouldn't even look back. That's the kind of guy Dan Buckley is. And you can say, well, that's business. Yeah, maybe. And I can respect that. If that's how it is, that's how it is. But to say some blather like this, as if somehow you care so deeply. No, he doesn't care. I care. You know, some of you out there still care. We care because, you know, we're the people who put our passion and our money into this for decades. We're the reason the industry still even exists at all. You know, we are the true customers of everybody. Retailer, publisher, distributor, creator. We are their customers. But you notice, none of us came into Dan's thoughts here. Except to say when he wants to bring in the word community. Because what didn't you hear in any of that spiel he was giving? Well, we need to show respect to our end users. We need to show respect to the paying customers. The Wednesday warriors. We need to keep those guys happy. We need to listen to them and give them the things that they actually want to see happen. We need to make them happy with the product we produce. He didn't say that. Because it never crossed his mind to think about that. And that kind of says it all. Because while he's telling you all this stuff, you know, his little kumbaya moment there at the end, what are they really doing? Well, here we are. We got the rumor. Despite audiences growing tired of girl boss stories, Marvel Studios still wants upcoming X-Men film reboot to focus on female mutants. What? And seemingly proving that the studio has learned nothing from their own failures, despite the ongoing rejection of the tired girl boss narratives typical of recent media productions, a new rumor suggests that Marvel Studios is still hoping to center their upcoming X-Men film reboot on the team's female members. So right there, remember what he said about, like, we got to work hand in hand with the studios so that we can, you know, get people interested in the comics again. So you're going to work hand in hand by what? Doing more of the same stuff that already hasn't worked? Is that the plan, Dan? As recapped by numerous outlets, including X-Men Reboot fan, the X-Men Reboot fan Twitter account, in a December 18th post shared onto his personal Patreon account, Reichman allegedly alleged 3 new details regarding the X-Men cinematic outing. That Mr. Sinister would serve as its main villain, that Magneto would be left out of its cast as an attempt to differentiate the MCU's mutants films from previous Fox-helmed ones, and that the film's plot would focus squarely on the various women who made up the ranks of the titular team. And here it is right here. Marvel Studios' current plan for the X-Men reboots includes focus on the female characters. Mr. Sinister as top choice for main villain. No Magneto involved to differentiate from previous films. Finally, this sounds so promising. Does it? Or does it sound just like more of the same? I mean, we all remember Kevin Feige come out and saying he wanted to make the MCU at least 50% female. And how did that work out? Phases 4 and 5 have bombed. Black Widow bombed. Shang-Chi bombed. The Eternals bombed. Ant-Man Quantumania bombed. The Marvels bombed. She-Hulk bombed. Moon Knight bombed. Hawkeye bombed. Echo bombed. I could go on all day. And so what's their solution? Well, let's just keep doing that. And this is what Dan Buckley wants to connect the comics with. Gee, I wonder why people don't have a lot of optimism, Danny. I wonder why. But they're not just doing it in the movies. They're already doing it in the comics. Here's about the future of the X-Men franchise after the horrible ending to the Krakoan age. Jed MacKay and Ryan Stegman's X-Men, Gail Simone and Dave Marquez's Uncanny X-Men, and Eve Ewing's and Carmen Carnero's Exceptional X-Men will be the ongoing series in an all-new era of mutant storytelling. Did any of those names excite you? And especially the writers, Jed MacKay, Gail Simone, and Eve Ewing. Yeah, certainly 3 people I think of when I think of some really great comic stories in the last decade. In the wake of their acclaimed Krakoan age, I'm sorry, guys. I couldn't get through that with a straight face. In the wake of their acclaimed Krakoan age, witness the X-Men's latest evolution this summer in X-Men From the Ashes. Just now at the Future of Marvel Comics, X-Men and Digital Comics panel at South by Southwest, Editor-in-Chief C.B. Cebulski and Executive Editor Tom Brevoort, two gentlemen who were all about denigrating the readers, by the way, were joined by writers Jed MacKay and Gail Simone to announce what's coming next for Marvel's line of X-Men comics. This new era of X-Men will be centered around the 3 flagship titles written and drawn by some of today's most influential and acclaimed creators. I'm sorry. You can't. Like I said, it reads like comedy. I swear to God, it reads like comedy. Some of today's most influential and acclaimed creators. Acclaimed what? For horribleness? Acclaimed for being, scumbags on the internet to the readers? Is that what you mean by acclaimed? Acclaimed for being the assholes online? Really? Is that? Each series will offer different explorations of the mutant mythos as they take Marvel's Merry Mutants into bold and untrodden territory. Yeah, I'm sure it's going to turn out really well. But, it's not just Marvel that's doing all this. DC isn't doing anything to help anything either. Wonder Woman's Trinity backups prove we need more slice-of-life superhero stories. Yes, that's the one thing we're all crying out for, isn't it, folks? There's not enough stories about, Wonder Woman sitting around with Superman, sipping tea and eating hot dogs, talking about their feelings. We don't want any of that stupid, action and adventure. We don't want that nonsense. We need more slice of life when they're sitting around talking over coffee about why why Batman's such a dink sometimes, and why the Flash needs to learn to slow down and smell the roses. Wonder Woman's 2023 relaunch with Tom King and Daniel Samper is creating buzz with a unique story involving a new character, Trinity. What buzz? Who? Where? Did any of you hear of this? I certainly haven't. I mean, I heard about Tom King being on Wonder Woman, which told me right there it's probably going to suck because Tom King can't write himself out of a wet paper bag. But what buzz? Where? Have you heard anything about this? Because I certainly haven't. Superhero comics traditionally focused on action are now exploring slice-of-life storytelling, appealing to fans of manga and anime. Well, there you go. See, that's it. See, once again, they can't work with what makes them special. We got to do what other guys are doing. They do decompressed storytelling in movies. We got to do decompressed storytelling. They make it like more interactive in a video game. We got to try to make it more interactive in the comics. Manga is selling really well. Let's do what manga does. Let's just copy everybody else. Let's not do anything of our own. Let's not look at what makes us unique. Let's not look at the things that made us popular with people for decades that made them love us. No, let's not pay attention to that. Let's do what everyone else is fucking doing. The success of Batman Wayne Family Adventures and the Trinity backups in Wonder Woman indicates a growing demand for more slice-of-life superhero stories. Again, who heard about any of this? The Wayne Family Adventures? I don't know what that is. I never even heard of it. I never even heard of it until I saw this article. And the Trinity backup, didn't even know there was a Trinity character. Batman Wayne Family Adventures is successful, but it has a different audience than those who usually read superhero comics. Well, then why the hell are you talking about turning these books into that then? Let's take the superhero comics and make them like these comics that are not superhero comics because they have a completely different audience. What? However, that doesn't mean there's no place for slice-of-life comics in mainstream comics industry. The Trinity backups in Wonder Woman show that superhero comic fans can enjoy a great slice-of-life comic. While the big two doesn't always listen to its fans, sales speak louder than words. Yes, they do. And we just saw how they spoke. They spoke in the fact that the Marvel and DC are less than 10% of the book publishing industry. 10% of sales, less than 10% of sales. Scholastics and manga are eating their lunch. And rather than say, hey, let's figure out what we're doing wrong and stop doing that, instead they're like, well, let's just double down on it and try to mimic everybody else, and we'll just try to do what they do. Maybe if DC sees that the Trinity one-shot sells well, they'll do more mainstream slice-of-life superhero comics. If DC does them and makes money, Marvel will follow suit. Modern superhero fans are ready for more slice-of-life comics, and they could help the big two cross over into the manga market and open up all new sales avenues. There you go. That's what it comes down to. It has nothing to do with creating great works. It has nothing to do with respecting the characters or the audience. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's just how can we kind of crowd ourselves into the manga market so that maybe we can get some of their sales. That's all it is. That's all it is. They see manga dominates. Well, let's just do what manga does. But never mind, that's not going to work, because if you want manga, it's already there. Who's going to say, yeah, let me go buy that Batman Wayne Family Adventures when I can just go buy the My Hero Academia that I've been buying for the last 30 volumes? Who's going to do that? Nobody. And since, there's a lot of cultural stuff in differencing between manga and Western comics, the people who love manga probably aren't going to care about this stuff. You know who's buying these slice-of-life stories? Nobody. That's why despite what he said, all the buzz, there's no buzz. Nobody's talking about Tom King's Wonder Woman or this Wayne Family event. Nobody's talking about this stuff. Except a few media shills online. That's about it. And then, of course, we have the whole thing with James Gunn's Superman suit that came out. Remember that little kerfluffle last month? James Gunn posted the first look of the superhero on Threads, which prompted people to critique Superman's threads. He also confirmed that the photo was taken in camera to anyone who was claiming it was AI generated. You might be thinking, isn't a superhero suit more about comfort and agility than style? And you'd be right if this was real life, but it's a movie, which means that Superman's suit is more important than the plot itself. And fans were not happy. See how they mock people when they're not happy with what they're doing? And, you know, what they did was definitely mock worthy. I grabbed this one screen cap here, which I think signifies everything about it. You know, here it is. Get ready, Superman, and this is the image that they released. And he goes, "Hey, so behind you, I said I'll get to it when I get to it." And there it is. This is disrespectful to Superman. This is disrespectful to his audience. But this is what they're doing. This is how, like Dan Buckley says, they're trying to create optimism and get people excited. This is the stuff they're doing. Marvel and DC, we're really hip with the kids. And again, the media, they're just as bad as they always have been, because here's right here, comics are still failing their female characters and creators. You know, one of the biggest mistakes they've done is turning boy brands into girl brands. That's what Disney has done with Marvel. That's what Disney has done with Star Wars. That's what DC is doing with a lot of their characters. And yet somehow they're failing the female characters and creators. So let's think. I put this in because, again, this shows you just how out of touch everybody is. Publishers like Marvel and DC hold the power to change the male-dominated comic book industry by promoting diversity in characters and creators. What the hell have they been doing for the past 10 years? Riri Williams, Muslim Ms. Marvel, Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, or Coral Manvers, as some prefer to call them. You know, they've been doing this for years. The female Black Panther. What's her name? I can't even bother to remember her name because I don't care. This, you know, promoting diversity in characters and creators. You just saw the new X-Men lineup. Eve Ewing, Gail Simone. You know, neither one of them writing anything worth a damn, but yet they're still getting work. Representation matters in comics. Influence readers' immersion, empathy, and story quality. Publishers should aim for a more inclusive industry. So again, what's missing in all this? What's missing in all this right here? Good storytelling. Representation matters because you want to influence readers' empathy. Don't engage their minds where they're like interested in the story. No, engage their empathy. See, again, this is it. It's all on emotion. Everything they do is based. There's nothing logical about anything they say or do. This is why they've attacked people the way they have. You come in saying this work sucks because Spider-Man would never do this, or Thor would never do that, or Batman would never say this. And this is why they take it personal and call you a bigot. Because they aren't coming at it from a place of logic. They're coming at it a place of emotion. And this is what has been destroying comics. Gender inequality persists in comic books, with male characters and creators dominating. Fans can support diverse stories to prompt industry change. They do. You know, if you want stuff for certain groups, you can make stuff for certain groups. But what you don't do is take something that, you know, already has its audience and say, well, we're going to completely change this and tell the audience that you have, if you don't like it, you're a bigot. That doesn't work. That doesn't prompt change that helps to grow anything. In fact, it just creates division, it creates animosity, it creates resentment. But, you know, Thayer here, I guess, he doesn't care as long as, you know, his views are reflected. Comic books are and have and always have been a male-dominated industry, which of course is not true. If you go back in time to the 1940s and early 50s, there was quite a bit of women who read comics, but then you had comics for girls, romance comics and some cartoon comics and stuff that was aimed specifically at female readers, and they sold in the hundreds of thousands to millions of copies. So right there, his first sentence is a lie, which shows you how stupid Thayer is. When comics first emerged in the early 20th century, they catered to girls and boys. So right there, he just contradicted his own thing. Comics are and always have been a male-dominated industry. In the early 20th century, they catered to girls and boys. Which is it, Thayer? With over 90% of kids in the 1940s reading comics regardless of gender. Well, gee, that would seem to suggest that you don't have to make them specifically targeted to a group. Just create good quality work and people will buy it. Early comic book creators, however, were almost exclusively male. So then what does that prove? That what plumbing you have between your legs doesn't mean you're going to be a good writer. You don't need to be a woman to write to women. You don't need to be a man to write to men. You just got to understand what it takes to tell a good story. And by the 60s, the comic book industry had become heavily skewed towards comics marketed to boys and young men. With profits coming from a mostly male audience, publishers prioritized stories by and about men, and the cycle continued. Oh my goodness, you mean a business focused on creating a product that actually sold to people who were willing to buy it? They said, these people are buying our stuff, so let's keep making more of it? Oh my God! Stop the presses! This pattern led to a faulty assumption that still persists today. The myth that only men can enjoy and buy comic books. Again, after just having said that they cater to boys and girls. And this is a lie too. No one says only men can enjoy and buy comic books. My wife is a living example. And she didn't have to change the books for her. She loved the Justice League, but they didn't feminize the Justice League because, oh, well, she's a female reader, we got to make it more appealing to women. They just told great stories, and she loved them. She loved the Titans. She loved Superman. But according to Thayer, she shouldn't because, well, only men buy and enjoy comic books. And I know she wasn't the only one. Again, talking to a guy who worked in shops, I saw female readers. So the faulty pattern isn't in the comic industry. The faulty pattern is in Thayer's thought processes. Almost a century later, in 2024, gender equality has grown in almost every industry, but comic books are still lagging behind, with male characters and creators still heavily dominating the medium. Again, where has Thayer been for the past 10 years? With the flood of female characters and gay characters and non-white characters. Never mind the fact that there was already diversity in the comics. When I first started reading comics, when I first got serious into them in the late 80s, the X-Men, half the team was women. And it was being led by an black African woman. Not even African-American, an African-African. That was comics when I came in. So how can you say that comics are lagging when that was the case 40 years ago? For women of color and people who identify as non-binary, representation is even worse. See, again, notice the key word, representation, not storytelling, not, quality, not entertainment, representation. And this demagoguery of representation is another factor in what has destroyed the mainstream comic book industry, since you're seeing the story that you saw at the start here with those numbers from Brian Hibbs. This is what has led to those numbers. The world's population is approximately half male and half female. Oh, what? No, what? Wait, I thought there was more than two genders, you bigot. Thayer, you fucking sexist bigot. No gender has an inherent advantage in writing or creating visual art. Comic book writers and artists of every gender, race, and sexual orientation exist. However, whether a particular artist's voice reaches people is largely in the hands of publishers. Wrong! Wrong! Especially not today. An artist's voice reach is dependent entirely upon their skills and ability. Do they have what it takes to make engaging, compelling stories that a mass audience wants to read? If they do, they will have success. If they don't, they won't. Does their name get people to want to pick a book up? If it does, then they will be very well received. If it doesn't, they won't. It's not in the hands of the publishers. It's in the hands of the creators themselves. Even more so when you factor in things like crowdfunding, where you're basically trading on your name. Because now you are the publisher. So if you want your work out there, you can make it happen. It's never been easier to make it happen. But see, this isn't what he's talking about. He's not talking about like whether they can actually create the work. It has to be popular. And you don't get to dictate that as the creator. You don't get to decide, oh, I should be seen as a genius. I should be seen as popular. No. That will come if your work is of quality and has enough of an audience that wants to purchase it. And if you don't have that, it won't. Publishers make the final decision about who is writing a particular comic and which comic characters are being featured in new publications. As a result, publishers, particularly Marvel and DC, which dominate the comic book industry, again, we know that isn't true anymore. We saw those numbers. You saw them here at the start of this stream. That is not true. Can choose which stories are being told and whose voices are being heard, which we've seen. We've seen that already. When they force characters to be certain ways that they're not meant to be, when they replace male characters to female ones, when they replace white characters with black ones, when they replace straight characters with gay ones, when they take a writer who, nobody likes and put them on the book because, well, we want them to have that voice. They've actually been doing exactly what he says here. Publishers have a choice of whether to perpetuate the cycle of male-dominated content being marketed to male-dominated audiences or make changes that create a more inclusive industry for creators and readers. Publishers can and should be doing better. The more I'm reading this, the angrier I'm getting. Because they are doing the very thing he says he wants them to do. And because they are, you see where their numbers are. So if now they're starting to maybe trying to switch it up, although again, as you saw from my examples, they're not necessarily going to do that. Maybe it's because they understand that, well, we've done what Thayer wants and it's only led us to ruin. Maybe we need to back it up and go back to before when stuff actually sold. What were we doing? Oh, maybe we should do that again. See, so this tells me Thayer is someone who actually hates comics, or at the very least doesn't care. What they do is they want power and dominance over an industry. They want to force down everyone's throat their personal beliefs, whether you want them or not, whether they belong in that book or that character or not. And that, again, is why the numbers are as they are now. From a decade of doing this. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result? Some readers may be asking, why does representation matter? No, they're not asking that. They're asking, why do you hate comics? Why are you working in the comic industry as a supposed media shill for comics when you hate comics? That's what they're actually asking Thayer. I know I certainly am. To begin with, everyone enjoys stories about characters that remind them of themselves. Actually, no, that's not true. I've loved many characters that remind me nothing of myself. For example, Bruce Wayne. I don't know what it's like to have my parents murdered. I can't relate to that. I can't relate to being rich. I can't relate to being driven so hard to do something that it excludes all other considerations, the way he has his mission. I can't relate to Tony Stark. I don't know what it's like to be a multimillionaire and an inventive genius. I can't relate to that. I can't relate to having a heart injury. I can't relate to having advanced technology at my fingertips. I can't relate to any of these things. But yet, I can tell you how many Batman and Iron Man comics I've read and enjoyed. The characters don't remind me of myself. But yet I enjoyed them. So once again, another lie from Thayer. Now, there may be some people who are stupid who think a character has to represent them for them to enjoy it. And if that's the case, well, then they just shouldn't be reading that book. If you can't enjoy the character for what they actually are and can only enjoy it if you see yourself as the character, which, by the way, is a very female way to do things. You know, in the male brain, again, this has been proven in science, you know, when guys see something that's cool, they think the thing is cool. Whereas women put themselves in the place of the one being cool. You know, so like when we see Iron Man, we're thinking, wow, how awesome would it be to be in armor and go flying around and doing all the things that Tony Stark does. A woman would see that, be like, how cool would it be to be Tony Stark? See, they want to be the person or the thing. And so all of this that Thayer is doing is from that feminine perspective of it has to relate to me. I have to see myself in this. It has to be like a mirror. This vanity and narcissism is destroying comics. The more people can see themselves reflected in the world of a story, the more they can immerse themselves in the story, except then explain stuff that has nothing to do with the real world. You know, He-Man was big at one time. That's a total fantasy. How do you see yourself in that story? You know, Flash Gordon. How do you see yourself in that story? Yet people were able to immerse themselves in these characters so much that they became icons. Transformers. How do you immerse yourself in that story? You're not a robot. You don't know what it's like to be a robot on a foreign alien planet. But yet, look at the new Transformers book. Everybody loves it. It's one of the few things that actually is selling decently in the industry right now. So no, you don't need to immerse yourself in the story by having it reflect you. In fact, you can very much do the opposite. And it's actually probably more beneficial to your mental health if you do. When women read stories that focus primarily on men, it can feel like there's no place for women in the story, or at least none that's desirable. Well, then maybe, again, what is people like Thayer told us about stuff we don't like? Well, it's not for you. So if the women who are reading those books say, well, I don't like this, well, then it's not for you. Go find something that is. There's a lot of stuff out there. Funny how that never works the other way, isn't it? After they've taken over and destroyed something you love, you're told, well, this just isn't for you. But then when they come into something and it doesn't reflect them and they're like, oh, I don't like this. It's not, they never hear, well, it's just not for you. It's no, you got to change it so I can like it. When stories glorify male heroes but relegate female characters to the background, it sends a message to female readers that they are not valued. Does it? I mean, if the book is called Batman, who do you think the book should focus on? If the book is called Spider-Man, Who do you think the books focus on? Mary Jane Watson? When comics focus primarily on men, it discourages women from enjoying and financially supporting the medium and helps perpetuate the biases already in place in the industry. Except there are already women in the industry. There were already women buying comics. He stated in the very beginning of this that it wasn't, that there was, back in the day, lots of men and women. Now, women stopped reading. Now, why? Well, maybe that's a question you should try to figure out the answer to. Why did women stop reading comics in greater numbers? Was it because they were pushed out? Or was it because they found other things they liked better as technology and entertainment choices, grew? They found stuff that I like this better than I do comics, whereas the men still enjoyed comics. Could that be why? So are you saying women shouldn't have the right to choose the types of entertainment they want to engage in, that they have to be forced to engage with comics so that everything can be kept, quote unquote, equitable? Is that what we have to do? Force women to read comics when they don't want to? Is that why we have to destroy all the characters for people who themselves may not even care or want to be involved? How much sense does that make? This hurts female fans and publishers who could be tapping into a massive but neglected market. Well, if it's a neglected market, then all you got to do is create product that they want to see. That's all you got to do. And that's what they've done for the last 10 years, feminizing, basically, superhero comics. Which, again, as he says, are dominated by men. Yes, superhero comics are. Not all comics of all kinds, but superhero comics, yes, definitely male-dominated. And they've spent the last 10 years feminizing them, and they've seen no great shift to women buying these books. So either there aren't very many female fans, or they don't feel neglected by that subgenre not being for them. They find other things that they do like, and that's what they support. In addition to allowing readers to imagine themselves in a world of the story, representation matters because it builds empathy and understanding among people from different backgrounds. By reading stories about people with different experiences, readers gain a greater understanding of what it's like to exist in different circumstances. If men are only exposed to stories that glorify other men, it gives the erroneous impression that only men are capable of those feats depicted in those stories and minimizes the impact and contribution of women. How does a story that is focused on a man minimize the impact of women? If it's the man's story, then it's his perspective that we're getting, correct? So why should we worry that a woman isn't getting, equal representation in that story? It's not her story. Now, if you want to make female characters and do female stories, you can do that. But the problem here is that those historically now are showing that they don't sell. It's been done for 10 years. It hasn't worked. The sales are not good. So, again, short of forcing women to engage in entertainment they don't want to, how do you fix that? I'd be interested to hear what Thayer thinks on that. Of course, I doubt they've thought very much on this to begin with. When women are relegated to support roles rather than experiencing their own heroic journeys, it creates the impression that women are only capable of support roles, which builds gender bias in real-world interactions as well. Increasing empathy and compassion for different people helps reduce violence and conflict in the real world, which is arguably a good thing. I'm sorry. You could find anybody walking the street, go up to any man and say, if you read a comic book that said it was wrong to beat women, would that, make you so you wouldn't beat women? And the answer is going to be no. If they said, if you saw something that said that, raping is wrong, Would that make you less inclined to rape than you already do? They'll probably say no. And not because they actually like those things, but because there is never in the history of the world anyone who has said, I was going to do this bad thing, but because I read in a comic that it was wrong, because they showed me this experience from a woman's perspective or whatever, that suddenly I had all this empathy and I no longer felt like I wanted to do that thing. There's not one little thing, a comic, and not one iota where a comic has reduced violence and conflict in the real world. Not one iota. Not even a little bit. Not even once. That is propaganda. That's what that is. When you're saying that we want to use these to make people think and believe a certain way, that is propaganda. That is not entertainment. That is propaganda. And comics are not supposed to be propaganda. They are supposed to be entertainment. So his whole thesis is wrong to its core. The only thing forcing characters into roles they don't belong in, or forcing the writing to be written in a way that goes against what the, as he would put it, the dominant market wants, all that does is kill the book. All that does is kill the business, which, again, at the start of this stream, you saw that's exactly what it's done. Perhaps the simplest answer to why representation matters, however, is that diverse characters tend to make a story better. Really. Tell me, which is the better story? Iron Man, The Armor Wars, or the Riri Williams saga? Which is the better story? Spider-Man Kraven's Last Hunt, or the Superior Spider-Man with Dr. Octopus as Spider-Man? Which is the more superior product? Iceman as a member of X Factor in the 80s, or the gay Iceman who always talks about his boyfriends now? So diversity does not make a story better. Now, it can help in giving you more choices. If you have quote unquote diverse characters, there's maybe certain types of stories you could tell that you might not be able to if those characters weren't there. But diversity in and of itself does not make a story better. In fact, it adds nearly nothing of value to do that. It's bad storytelling when the characters in a story are all the same. No, it's bad storytelling when all the characters sound the same. You could have a rainbow coalition of characters, but if they all sound the same and do the same and think the same and believe the same and say the same things, and you could just switch the word bubbles with any other character and it wouldn't even matter, that is bad storytelling. Something, again, which we see a lot of nowadays. No one is interested in repeatedly hearing the same story from the same perspective, including characters from various backgrounds and lived experiences in a fictional work makes the narrative framework richer and more complete. No, it doesn't. It just makes it more complex, potentially. Again, that all requires you to have actual skill as a writer. If you're just a hack, it doesn't matter whether you have, all the same type of character or you have a rainbow coalition of characters. They're all going to suck because you suck as a writer. But if you have any skill, it doesn't make the framework richer and more complete. It just makes it more complex because you have more different, angles to work from, which can create more problems, actually, if you think about it. and no one is interested in repeatedly hearing the same story from the same perspective. Well, that's pretty much all the books now. If you're white, heterosexual, male, you're evil. That's pretty much what all the books say now. And you're right. It does. No one is interested in that, which is why the sales suck. Again, going back to the very beginning here when we said that Watchmen was the best book on the book scan list in 2023 for the backlog for the mainstream comic publishers. Those are characters who are not all the same. They don't all sound the same. They don't all have the same ideology. And that's what makes the story gripping, because you have those different views. But yet, pretty much all the characters in there are white, aren't they? So they don't have the superficial diversity that Thayer is talking about. Most of them are men, and all of them are white. So according to Thayer, that should mean the story should suck. And yet, arguably among people, it's one of the greatest comic stories ever written. How can that be? It's nothing but a bunch of white people. And yet, they may be white, but they're not all the same. Their perspectives are different. And that's what makes the story compelling. You don't need superficial diversity to achieve this. You don't need to have a rainbow coalition to achieve that. You can have all the characters be of the same race or the same gender and still have differing perspectives. But see, a bigot like Thayer doesn't get that. The real world is full of a diverse range of people. If that diversity isn't present in a story, then that story loses its depth and sense of reality. Except, again, go back to Watchmen. According to Thayer here, that story has no depth or sense of reality. And yet, everyone, again, would tell you, arguably, it is one of the best comic stories ever written. So how can that be? Diversity is not a necessary product of a story. Now, in the hands of a skilled writer, it can be used and maybe create some, like I said, some complexities that you otherwise may not have. But if you don't have a good story to start with, if you don't have good storytelling capabilities already, well, it doesn't matter if you have diversity in your story or not. The superficial kind of diversity, that is, the kind that matters to Thayer. You could have all the different types of people in a story, but if you don't have the skills to tell a good story, then it doesn't matter. Whereas all the people in the story could all be the same race and gender. And if you have good storytelling abilities, that story can be gripping. Think about the movie 12 Angry Men. It was 12 people on the jury, all men, all white. And yet it's a very gripping story, isn't it? Why? According to Thayer, well, it should lose all depth and sense of reality. But it's because we weren't looking at the superficial points. When you're reading the story or watching the movie, you're seeing what the characters are saying. You're seeing how they're reacting and interacting. And that is where the depth and sense of reality comes from. And the fact that they're all white males doesn't really matter. This is what they've forgotten. This is why the books suck today. Marvel presents itself as being ahead of the curve in representation, with female heroes appearing in many of its early titles like the Fantastic Four, Avengers, and X-Men. Marvel features the first gay kiss and the first gay marriage. Half of the creators announced on the new main X-Men titles are women. Despite its inclusive marketing, Marvel has actually had the worst numbers when it came to April's 2024 new comics. 54.7% of Marvel's comics April of 2024 titles featured male characters or all male teams versus 7.8% featuring female characters or female teams. So there it is. It's not about whether it's good stuff, quality stories, interesting perspectives, great, writing and great art. No. It's just a pure numbers game. Everything has to be 50-50 or even more, like 30-70 in favor of the women. You see, that's what it's just a pure numbers game. It doesn't matter if these stories are good, just so long as they have enough quote unquote diversity. The remaining 37.5% focused on mixed gender teams or story anthologies. Among the writer and artist credits in its April titles, 88.5% of creators' credits were male, only 11.5% were female. Again, and so what? All that says is that there's less women making comics because they're not interested in making comics. At least not for Marvel. Marvel has an incredible cast of female characters who could easily headline their own comic book, which, of course, they have, and they have failed many, many times. How many times have we rebooted Captain Marvel? How many times have we rebooted Ms. Marvel? How well did Riri Williams' Iron Man run sell? Wasp is an original member of the Avengers and actually named the team. She's one of the most accomplished people in the Marvel Comics universe. But unlike her male teammates Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor, she doesn't have her own book, though writer Al Ewing has been doing it, blah, 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 blah. Storm is arguably the most powerful and most interesting than her former co-leader of the X-Men, Wolverine. Wolverine has never been the leader of the X-Men. I mean, at least unless it's within the last 10 years they did that, because I've never seen it. Anytime I was reading Marvel, Wolverine was a member, but he wasn't a leader. Yet he appears in several titles while she has been relegated to group casts, except for the times when they've tried to have books with Storm in it and they don't sell. He fails to mention that. Other female characters like Black Widow or Scarlet Witch, who have previously headlined their own titles, have recently been paired up with male characters in their latest comics, presumably because Marvel believes male characters will help the comics sell better. Well, that, or they just figure maybe if we have a male character in there, it'll make a more interesting story. Could that be? So they have a dynamic to play off of. Because if he's admitting here that the male characters are being done to make the sales better, well, that would mean that the sales weren't good when they had their own books solo, doesn't it? Which kind of precludes the point that, oh, well, maybe, they didn't deserve their own solo titles. On the bright side for Marvel's comic book lineup is their use of diverse teams in their comics. Arguably, a mixed gender group is the most equitable representation possible. Marvel's heroes teams also feature more people of color than their competitors, another group struggling for representation in comics. So now it's, see again, all superficial stuff. Not, hey, what about the perspectives? What about the actual characters' stories? The storytelling. No, that doesn't matter. By promoting women and other underrepresented groups in popular team books like X-Men and Avengers, Marvel has been able to tell stories that appeal to a broader audience and express diverse viewpoints. Except that was never necessary. Again, as I said, you can have diverse viewpoints even if everybody in the team were all the same race and gender. See, here's the thing is, it's people like Thayer who are the true racists and sexists because they believe all are a monolith. If you're a white male, you think like this. If you're a black person, you think like this. If you're a woman, you think like this. But that's not how it really works. Again, just like with Dan Buckley and the rest, they just don't get it. They don't understand what it is they're doing. The fact that Marvel is publishing 7 times as many comics featuring solo male heroes versus female ones is still a big issue. Marvel's lack of female creators is also dismaying, given that they had the worst proportion among their competition. So, again, maybe that has less to do with Marvel being bigoted, and maybe it has to do with the quality that the female creators are producing. Because, I remember quite a few great female creators while I was reading Marvel stuff in the 80s and the 90s. Ann Nocenti, Louise Simonson, Christy Marks, Cynthia Martin, Mary Jo Duffy, Marie Severin. I mean, these are just names off the top of my head, folks. I'm not even sitting here, digging in deep. to find more. These are just off the top of my head. These were women who understood the mechanics of storytelling and how to tell a compelling story with characters. The character didn't have to look like them or think like them. They understood who the characters were. And that's what these modern creators, especially the quote-unquote diverse creators that Thayer is talking about, don't seem to understand. They don't understand the characters. That's why they interject their own personal politics, their personal beliefs, their personal agendas, because that's what they know. They don't know the characters. They don't understand them, and they don't care to, which is another reason the books don't sell. DC relies very heavily on its most famous heroes, Batman and Superman, to drive sales, which has led to a high percentage of its comics being focused on male characters. In recent years, they have done slightly better than Marvel at promoting female characters and creators. In April 2024, for DC's new comics, 65.8% of titles focus on male characters, while 17.1% focus on female. You notice how he keeps going back to percentages, as if that somehow says something. But it doesn't. All it says is these are the characters that resonate with people. More of them are male than female. So what? These are the characters the readers want to read about. Do their wishes not matter in any of this? The remaining 17.1% were mixed gender or teen anthologies. DC had more female-forward books than Marvel, but fewer books about teams, which provide opportunities to showcase female characters who don't have their own title. See, so even when you're having more, it's still not good enough. You see that? They do more, but it's still not good enough. DC's writer and artist credits for April 2024 were also slightly better than Marvel's, with 83.2% male creators versus 16.8% female creators. DC's female representation relied heavily on colorists, particularly prolific colorist Jordi Belair, who was featured in multiple issues. So again, even when you give them what they want, here's more of the representation. Oh yeah, but that's just the colorist. Never make them happy. The biggest challenge for DC regarding gender equality is its reliance on a few popular characters instead of a more diverse mix of teams. Well, maybe because those few popular characters are popular, and that's where the money is. And since they bring in the money, that enables them to do the other books that aren't as popular, which will give some of those characters that you say you want airtime to get some. So if you got rid of those popular characters, well, then you wouldn't have the money coming in, and then you'll have even less. Or does the economics of that just, is that too much for Thayer's pea brain? I have to wonder. Most of DC's best-selling titles feature either Batman or Superman. As a result, DC publishes many comics starring these male heroes. DC could leverage the popularity of Batman to promote related female characters like Batgirl or Batwoman, which they have, and those books don't sell. Perhaps even taking a page from Marvel's book and including them on a team with Batman himself, which, again, they've done that. Remember the Detective Comics period where it was like a team? Batwoman was on the team. Unlike her male counterpart, Wonder Woman is often compared to Batman and Superman, but she only has one ongoing title. So see, again, there is. Now there's, here's this female character who's got her own book. It's only one book. If supported by marketing efforts, Wonder Woman has the potential to anchor a suite of titles, much like DC's male heroes. Except, again, that's never been proven. And in fact, Wonder Woman's sales, if you look at the history, bear out that she may be, acclaimed like Superman and Batman, but not the least of which is she's probably one of the very first female superheroes ever to have their own book. But her sales don't reflect what Superman and Batman do. It's just like this nonsense you're hearing in the WNBA versus the NBA. The NBA brings in multi-times more money than the WNBA ever could. In fact, they bring in so much money, they partially subsidize the WNBA. But then when they hear that the women don't get paid the multi-millions that the male players in the NBA get, they say, oh, that's not fair. It's like, but it is fair. You're not bringing in the money. You're not bringing in the attendance. You're not selling out arenas. You are bringing in the interest that the male NBA is. And that's why they get the money and you don't. And it's the same here. Superman and Batman sell way, way more than Wonder Woman. That's why they have multiple titles. That's why things revolve around them. That's why they get the prominence that they do over someone like Wonder Woman. It's not rocket science. However, DC's biggest area for improvement concerns women of color who are almost completely absent from DC Comics. So, and that's funny to me because, again, you go back to the whole point of someone like Thayer, and I'm sure they would say that having a white male write a story about a black female character would be wrong because, well, they're not black female. They don't understand their plights. They don't understand their experiences. How can they write about that when they don't know it? And yet, here they are lamenting that there's not so many characters like that. It's like, so if the males who are working in the industry made the kind of characters that he's talking about, they're bigots because they're writing about something they don't understand, and it's denigrating to the people who they're basing that work on because you're just based on a bunch of stereotypes and stupid stuff like that. But then they say, okay, well then I guess we won't make those characters because we don't want to offend anybody by doing that, so we just won't make those characters. Now it's, oh, you guys don't have any characters like this. Again, like I said, no pleasing them. One area where DC has done better than Marvel or Image in its use of female creators. None of the major publishers are anywhere near gender parity in this respect, but DC had the highest percentage of women working on its books as writers or artists. This representation undoubtedly contributes to the incredible quality of many of DC's female-led titles. Birds of Prey, Poison Ivy, and Harley Quinn all feature female leads and writers. All three titles are excellent. I like that. They're excellent. Well, then why aren't they selling better? Why aren't they selling the Batman and Superman numbers? By increasing its use of female creators, even on books with male leads, DC can tell stories from a new perspective that puts fresh spin on classic but perhaps overused characters like Batman. So basically, let's just feminize Batman. Again, something we have already seen done in the last 10 years, taking the characters and making them buffoons. You got to make the male a buffoon so you can pump up the female character. See, the guy's an idiot, so the woman has to come in and explain everything to him and show him how it's really done because she's a strong woman. That's what he means by a fresh spin. Make Batman ineffective and stupid and a jerk. I mean, these people, they're so transparent. Here's the one that really got me. Was this bit. For comic book fans, the single most important way of changing the status quo is by financially supporting comics, creators, and publishers that celebrate diversity and tell stories from different perspectives. Really? So, when are we going to see the stories that are, reflective of conservative viewpoints? Where are we going to have the hero who fights to secure the border? Where are we going to have the hero who fights to stop the inner city crime by taking out the people who are doing it, who are most likely going to be of a certain melanin count? Where are those? Are we going to see those perspectives? Oh no, we're not going to see those perspectives. Oh no. Oh, we can't have those perspectives. Oh. How about the one where the hero loves his country and thinks its citizens matter more than people who invade the country and who are not citizens? We're going to have that perspective. Oh, no, we're not going to get that perspective. No, not that. When I say different perspective, I don't mean those perspectives. It's the old chestnut, well, black conservatives aren't really conservative. I mean, the black conservatives aren't really black. Conservative women aren't really women. Conservative gays aren't really gay. You need to lift up women's voices. You need to listen to him. Believe all women. Well, here's this woman who's speaking conservative. Oh, not those women. By subscribing to great series like Sensational She-Hulk or Birds of Prey, readers can tell Marvel and DC that stories featuring female characters are as marketable and profitable as stories about men. Yes, and they will if the work is good. Like when Chuck Dixon was writing Birds of Prey, the book sold pretty well. Now you have people like Gail Simone writing it, and it doesn't. When She-Hulk was done by John Byrne, it sold very well. And now you have people who aren't of that caliber working on the book, and it doesn't. Because you've taken the character from what they were when they had a mass audience appeal and narrowed it down and said, well, we're going to ram this agenda down here. Now we're going to be all feminist and hating men. Men are idiots. Men are buffoons. Men are scum. And women are better than men, or better at everything. And then all of a sudden you find out, well, wait, why are people not buying this? Because the women can never have any flaws, and the men can be nothing but flaws, and especially white men. So when you do that, you drive away people because you're like, oh, well, this is just a Mary Sue fantasy. I don't care about that. There are also many incredible female and non-binary comic book creators working in the industry. Oh, God. By buying books by creators like Kelly Thompson, Sana Tanaka, or G. Willow Wilson, to name a few, fans can demonstrate to publishers that employing diverse creators is not just ethically right, but can also improve the quality of their publications and help their sales. So it doesn't matter if these people produce work you want to read. It doesn't matter if they produce good stories that are reflective of the actual characters they're working on. It doesn't matter if they are producing something that is actually entertaining to the people who are viewing it. That doesn't matter. Just buy it because my whammon are working on it. Buy it. Give them your money. And if you don't like it, just shut up and keep buying it. That way, the publishers will believe these people are popular and give them more work. You can see here that Thayer is not a very big proponent for meritocracy. Gender inequality is a huge problem in many industries, but comic books have particularly lagged behind. Brilliant stories are being told about female characters across all the major publishers, but there are not nearly as many as there should be. So how many should there be? Again, I've already noted several where they replaced characters or changed the characters or whatever. How many more should there be? And they all failed. All the ones they changed, they failed. How many more should there be? How many America Chavez's do we need to fail before we say, yeah, this isn't working? How many Ms. Marvels, Captain Marvels, Riri Williams? How many of them need to fail again and again and again? How many times before you go, maybe this isn't working. Maybe this isn't, the way to go. How many times must you put a person in a book like a Kelly Thompson or a Kelly Sue DeConnick or a Gail Simone, and then the book tanks before you say, oh, gee, maybe these people aren't very good creators? How many? Likewise, there are many incredibly talented female and non-binary creators producing comics, but their voices are not being heard nearly as often as their male counterparts. Why is that? Is it just bigotry? Or is it because they're not very good at what they do? Comics are better when they tell stories that reflect various experiences and viewpoints, but they can't do that if they've marginalized half the population. Nobody is marginalized in comic books. In fact, I'd say it's very much the opposite. There's too much non-marginalization, where people who are hacks, who don't have what it takes, are given jobs that they have no business having on characters that they don't know and understand to an audience that they actively hate. That's a problem. That's the problem. We need more marginalization. Let's kick out the people who don't have what it takes, no matter what their gender or race is, and get in people who do know what matters. When you're working on an established creation, an icon, you need to be reflective of what that icon represents. You can't just say, well, I just feel like telling this story, so I'm going to do this with Spider-Man. No, you don't do that. There's that famous page, I've shown it several times in these past streams, where Batman's swinging through the city and there's a riot going on, and they're ripping off a store, and he's sitting there basically saying, like, hey, I really got no business to say anything, besides they got insurance, and then he swings off. Batman would never do that. Even if he was busy, he'd be saying, it's breaking all over the city, I ain't got time for this. He'd throw some gas bombs down there and maybe throw a shadow over to try to scare the people off, and then swing away. He wouldn't just watch it go down and go, well, whatever, and then be on his way. That's not what Batman would do, but that's what he did in that story. Why? Because that's what the writer wanted. A writer who had no business writing Batman because they don't understand Batman and they don't understand his audience, and nor do they care. That's what we need to be rid of. That's the marginalization we need. In the comic book industry, power is highly concentrated in the hands of just a few publishers, which again, the numbers as you saw here on this stream prove that isn't true. If those companies adjust their practices to better reflect the diversity of the real world and their readers, the industry will change. Equity is possible, and it stands to benefit publishers as well as readers. Really, how's it benefited them so far? Retailers, and publishers who can't sell the books. Readers who aren't getting stories that they want to have and seeing the characters they love tarnished by these people with a political agenda. Like Thayer here, with diversity. How has that worked out so far for benefiting them? Just asking. By growing female audiences, comic book publishers have an opportunity to sell more books and expand the industry as a whole, enabling even more great stories to be told. Comics should be for everyone, and with a little effort, they can be. No, they already are, and they have been for decades. The comics didn't change. The people did. Women lost interest for whatever reason, and they didn't buy them in as big a numbers as they used to. And some subgenres were always male-dominated. Yes, like superheroes were always male-dominated. War comics were always male-dominated. Westerns were always male-dominated. And you know what? That wasn't a problem. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, if you're saying women aren't allowed to work in comics, women aren't allowed to create comics, women aren't allowed to read comics, okay, see, that's a problem. And then I would be on your side. Yeah, we got to stop that. But nobody has said anything like that. This forced diversity and superficial diversity that people like Thayer are talking about, this is part of the problem. If women aren't reading superhero comics, it's not because there's something wrong with superhero comics. It means it's just not to their tastes. Now, if you want to make superhero comics that are, you can, but odds are they'll end up, again, just like I said, getting canceled all the time because you won't get much of the male audience. And obviously the female audience, even when you make it quote unquote tailored to them, still isn't showing up for it. So what do? Keep throwing away the audience you have for one that will never show up? That's certainly a good business model. Gee, I wonder why the industry is in the state it's in. The state like this. Remember what Dan Buckley said about how important the retailers are and we need you? And, well, here you go. Fat Jack's Comic Crypt, Philly's oldest comic book store in Center City, is closing. Well, actually, it already has closed by now, but yeah. Fat Jack's is the Center City's oldest comic book store is set to close its door for the final times on May 29th. During its last weekend in business, many customers came to the shop to make some final memories. We're running a sale right now, 70% off everything in the store except the new books. So it's just been super, super busy, super slammed. But customers are making less stuff for us to move, so that's nice, says the store manager. The store was around for almost 50 years. Half a century. My lifetime. My lifetime. If I still lived back east, this could have been the shop I was going to ever since I was a little kid. And now it's closing. Why? Because they can't sell the stuff. You see right now, even here, they're saying it, 70% off. That's what they have to do to get stuff out the door. So that there's less stuff for us to move. These modern comics, 70% off to get people to even pick them up. These are $4 and $5 books. So you see how much of a discount that is. That's how little people think of these books. This is how Dan Buckley shows his support for the comic book shops by creating work that has to be sold at 70% off when you're going out of business. This is what they're supporting. This is what Thayer wants for the comic book shops. So keep support those female creators and those female characters so that you can continue to see shops like this close down. But I thought this was good. Here on Bleeding Fool, in sort of like condensing a lot of stuff into one little bit here. They talk about the lies and distortions in the business of the comic books, and talks about the state of the hobby. And it goes, tragically, the history of comic books can't be told without including its ever-diminishing sales numbers. While the specific numbers are difficult to obtain, something even Dan Buckley admitted to, it's not a secret, and websites such as Comicron have made a valiant effort to try to keep track of the numbers. When the industry started in the late 30s and 40s, it was not unusual for individual comic titles to sell millions of copies each month. Remember what I said about when they said female readers were there too? As time went on, these numbers started to decline to where today a title selling 100,000 copies is a big deal. A monthly title selling over 50,000 actually gets you in the top 10 in many cases. The aggregate annual numbers include the sale of trade paperbacks, and this also presents an inflated picture. Exactly. Like I said, they've been cooking the books and fudging the numbers for years. And now, as you saw with Brian Hibbs' story, him talking about those numbers, it's all coming home to roost. You can finesse those numbers all you want, but it's not going to change the reality. It's all going to come due. The check will come someday. You can push it off for a little while, but it's going to come due. And that's about where we are now. And this is again one of the distortions. Again, we just saw it, including manga and children books in comic sales. There's no question manga is extremely popular and sells really well in both comic and bookstores, as do many cartoon-styled books targeted toward children, such as Dogman. But let's be clear, manga buyers are a different group than traditional comic book buyers. The same is true for kids' books. Each product is bought for different yet very specific reasons. While Japanese manga and North American comics share a fundamental similarity, that is, they are images drawn in a sequential format, that is where the similarities end. I know of no comic book collectors who also collect manga. I'm sure they're out there, but I've never seen them. And I haven't either. Even in my days when I was working at the shops. And I remember the first was the Amera manga wave in the mid to late 90s, when it got popular for a second with Shonen Jump and things like that. The people who came in and bought that stuff, they never touched the Marvel and DC or Dark Horse or anybody else. Nope, they came in to get that, and that was it. I'm here to get my manga. They got their manga, they left. They didn't, I could say, hey, did you check out the new Spider-Man? Like, nah, it's okay. I'm not into that. So this is absolutely true. This is the problem. This is the problem. They're targeting people who aren't interested in what they're producing. People who read manga, people who read stuff like Dogman, they're not interested in what Marvel and DC have to offer. So that's why you're seeing them try to alter everything. Let's make it more like manga. Let's make it more like Dogman. So you can think they'll attract those readers over. And all they're doing is turning away the readers they have. This has been the downward spiral of the last 10 years in 2 paragraphs. Targeting groups and demographics that have little or no interest in what you're producing, while turning away the one that does. Because they are different. They do not want the same thing. They do not look for the same things. Like I said, this is why they need to focus on making better quality stories that they used to make. Like those types of stories, they need to have better quality with that. And then try to focus on things you do that others don't. Quit trying to compete with movies. Quit trying to compete with video games. Quit trying to compete with manga. You're never going to be those things. Stop trying. Do what you do. Do what you've always done. Make that work. That's the solution. A few years ago, the idea of including these two subcategories into the comic book hobby industry would have been considered strange and even questionable. Nonetheless, the industry decided to group these categories together. In my opinion, this was done for the sole purpose of inflating the sales figures and present a rosier picture of the industry, in spite of the reality that monthly comic book sales have been steadily declining. Ding, 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 ding. Hello? Who's been saying that? Who's been saying this is why those ICV2 Comic-Con bar graphs that they keep throwing out there is all a bunch of bull. You know, when you dig down into what those numbers mean, what do you find out? Oh, yeah, you know, kid stuff and manga is doing great. The mainstream comic book industry? Nope. Up until very recently, manga and children's books were not counted together and were seen as separate revenue streams in most comic book stores. It's only since the plummeting sales of traditional comic books that these products began being included in order to artificially inflate sales of what could be considered a comic book. Manga and children's books are categorized unto themselves, and their success is to be commended. You know, recently Rob Salkowitz, the author of Comic-Con and the Business Model of Pop Culture, wrote an editorial on the ICV2 website addressing this very issue, and his observations are worth taking note of. Rob says, more than 15 years ago, in the Scholastic-led explosion of young reader graphic novels, it's worth asking if this is doing the wider industry any good, in the medium of comics much good. It's certainly not awesome for other publishers angling for younger readers who are getting ground into pace by Scholastic's total market dominance. But more fundamentally, we have come full circle from comics aren't just for kids anymore to comics seem to be just for grown-ups now to is anyone but kids reading graphic novels in big numbers? See, I already showed you that. Yes, there it is. So there it is. This is it. This is what is changed. This is what the problem is. And did you see Dan Buckley's little thing to Comics Pro? Did you see anything in there that addresses any of this? He had Kumbaya, let's try all make a great community, and you know, you guys, you retailers are important to us, and we want to work with you, and we want to work with the studios and coordinate. But where's he talking about this? Where was anything to talk about how manga is eating your lunch and keeping younger readers from ever checking any of your stuff out? He has no answer for this. Nobody in the industry has answers for something like this. This is why they don't say anything about it. This is why they hid the numbers for years. This is why as you know, our friend here says that they conglomerated all those numbers together to paint that rosy picture. 2.2 billion. We're doing better than ever. Comics are doing great. This is why they did that, because they know it's not good. And they wanted to lie. Lie to you, lie to me, and most of all, probably lie to themselves. But now we've reached a point that they can't lie anymore. They can't gaslight anymore. Here's where the problem lies. For the traditional comic book world to piggyback on the success of manga and children's books only hides the failings of the traditional comic book market. Ignoring that reality also prevents systemic problems in the comic book market from being identified and changes made. And there are plenty of failings to talk about. It's too easy to fool ourselves into thinking that everything is okay when it's not. That's why I would suggest including manga and other things like children's book, cartoon books, like Diary of a Wimpy Kid or Dogman, distorts the comic book world. Yes, yes. Could not have said it any better myself. This is exactly it. This is the problem that needs to be addressed. And you saw from Dan Buckley, he has nothing to say about this. There is nothing he has to address this. Jim Lee at the DC and Marie Javins, they have nothing to address this. Nobody is looking to address this. Mostly because they probably have no idea how to address it. But also because if they even try to address it, then they have to admit their own culpability in it. And the only thing worse for these types than for us to be right is for them to be wrong. And in this case, it's both. And they certainly can't have that. And again, they just drive away the talent. as they do all this. They're doing all this. They're lying about the numbers, and they can't lie anymore. The gaslighting is failing, and all the cracks in the armor showing. Here's another one. I didn't have Warner Brothers treating me better than Disney on my bingo cards. Deadpool creator Rob Liefeld's open declaration of war against Disney and Marvel. Yes. So here it is. Dan Buckley talking about, like, we want to make people excited for comics and have the enthusiasm and exuberance that they used to have and the optimism. And yet they're driving away talent by treating them like shit. As we ride into the high-octane anticipation wave towards the Deadpool Wolverine release, the Marvel Universe seems to be reverberating its on-screen drama behind the curtains, with Deadpool's very own co-creator, Rob Liefeld, stirring the social media pot on the platform formerly known as Twitter. His recent outpouring of frustration regarding a rocky Disney relationship sends us the vital message that all is not calm in the superhero playground. In the world of comic book creators, tensions with big corporations like Disney and Marvel Studios are not uncommon. But the recent X-tirade from Deadpool creator Rob Liefeld has fans wondering what exactly is going on behind the scenes. My reps were screaming at me, were screamed at today. We're not Fox. Tell me about it. Also hung up on. More soon. I didn't have Warner Brothers treating me better than Disney on my bingo card, but there it is. Liefeld, who co-created Deadpool's character with Fabian Nicieza, took to X to air his frustrations with Disney, hinting at a disrespectful encounter his reps received. The following tweet mentioned a giant company that was employing coercion. While he didn't provide specific details, fans speculate that it may be related to compensation for his creation appearing in the upcoming Deadpool the Wolverine movie. So there it is. It's a numbers game, and this is how bad off the companies are, that they're treating the people who created the stuff that they're relying on to make money like utter shit. Why? Probably because they don't have the money. The free-flowing money from the COVID days, that's gone. The days of the billion-dollar movie like the Avengers Endgame are gone. As I said, these companies are now looking for where to cut things. We need to find ways to cut stuff out. And one of the things they'll cut is, well, we got to cut what we give creators. So it doesn't matter that Rob is the creator of Deadpool and that he deserves X, Y, and Z for that creation. We got to find a way to cut to not have to pay that, because we can't pay that what he wants because, we don't have it. This is the dire straits that the whole entire edifice is in. If that is the case, this wouldn't be a first time for Disney. This is the first time that Disney has faced backlash for its treatment of creators. Author Alan Dean Foster famously took Disney to court for unpaid royalties for his Star Wars novels, eventually reaching a settlement. Disney argued that having acquired the contracts from Lucasfilm, they were no longer obligated to fulfill the conditions of the earlier agreements. Foster and many other writers are said to have received their royalties after the case was ultimately resolved, though more do occasionally surface. So there you go. Anything they can do to get out of paying. They bought stuff and they own it, but they don't have to fulfill the obligations to the people who were involved in what they bought. With regards to the WB comment, he has never shied away from collaborating with other businesses. He co-founded Image Comics and had sporadic employment with DC. As of right now, Liefeld's only known project is with WB is the recently revealed Evangeline movie starring Margot Robbie. Oh God, that's going to be a clusterfuck. Liefeld's recent deal with Warner Brothers, one can assume that Disney's treatment of him may have pushed him to work at a rival studio. Could this be the beginning of a larger dispute over the rights to Deadpool and how they are compensated? Probably. Because on top of, the current economic state we have in the country right now, I can't see anybody letting anything go. So you got companies who are broke, who don't want to pay out. You got creators who want to get paid because they can't get decent wages and the economy is hard. And everybody is just, at each other's throat because what's left? And again, all of this was preventable. All they had to do was to give the consumer what they wanted. That's all they had to do. And they couldn't do that. They just couldn't even do that. So, this is what we're always told by show media's, favorite flunkies like the Whisper Network's own Heidi McDonald. Turns out comics are not dying. Don't believe the charlatan con men. Oh, charlatan con men like Brian Hibbs. Charlatan con men like Rob Sokowitz. Yes. Don't believe those guys. Don't believe them. Believe people like Heidi McDonald, who said comics are doing great, and then she whined because they got rid of the Eisner Award for journalism. Believe those people, because they don't have any secret agendas. They don't have anything they're trying to push on you. The last thing we're going to do here is, this is from an ICV2 interview that Buckley did before he did the Comics Pro commencement keynote speech. And I thought that would be interesting because the questions he's asked, some of these questions are very interesting, and even more so his answers. Again, it shows you just how out of touch all these people are. But let's start out with the big picture questions. We want to talk about the market, but let's start with the medium. What's your evaluation of the state of the comics medium? Dan Buckley, it's in flux, but I think it's in a healthy place. Obviously, there's been a lot of change in distribution, specifically in our core comics business. As I mentioned in my keynote, there's also a great deal of growth and opportunity coming from the middle grade original graphic novel business, where there's a lot of new readers to be found, which is good. If you asked me 10 years ago, what was the thing I was most fearful of? I was most fearful of the fact that the newsstand business collapsed and we no longer had a place for people to try out comics or learn how to read graphic fiction. Now we actually have a world of people who really want to read it. It's our job to go find them now and convert them into our business. But I feel very good about that. The digital comics business is also going through a bit of a flux, but I feel like it's in a really good place. Business models and vendors are trying to figure out how they fit in this new ecosystem, but I think there's a great opportunity for growth. The last piece is that there is also a great deal of interest in comics and graphic fiction in the Kickstarter world. He's talking about crowdfunding. It's probably more of a creator-owned talent world than publisher world, but it brings in health and vibrance to the industry. As I said, I think there is a lot of change, but I feel good about the industry. There's just some habits and new practices we'll need to get to. I don't know exactly what they are, but we're experimenting and playing with different things to take advantage of those changes. So what he's basically saying is things are changing. We don't know how. We don't know what we're going to do, but it's all good. Yet, as you saw with the numbers, yeah, they're bringing in, there's a lot of new readers to be found. Yes, but they don't want what you produce. So what good does that do? See, again, this is how out of touch people like Dan Buckley are. Drilling down a little bit by channel, what are your thoughts on the state of the direct market? I also feel the direct market is in a much better place than most people think it is. I'm sorry. Did we just not see those numbers that Brian Hibbs talked about? I guess Dan Buckley didn't see that. But I will admit there's some challenges that as we try to find our way out of the pandemic. See, it's just all the pandemic's fault. That's all it is. It's just the pandemic. There's nothing else. Nothing else to see here. We have to find a way to get people in the habit of going to the stores more. Let's get the Wednesday Warriors back. Yes, the Wednesday Warriors you drove away with your shitty work and your talent online, insulting them and telling them they aren't wanted and they aren't needed. Fuck you, Nazi. Yes. That's who you want to get back. You destroyed the shops with shitty work that's put them out of business. Fat Jack's 50 years closing up shop. This is who you want to get back. And what are you doing to get them back? Oh, well, we're going to make stuff more female-centric, like the X-Men movie, and more females writing the X-Men comics. So people like Thayer are happy, but, you guys who actually have bought the stuff, well, you guys, fuck off. We just want your money. Shut up. I mean, that's what you should just say. Shut up and give us your money. That's it. I do think a lot of those people are still shopping in stores, but they're not browsing as much. No, actually, a lot of them have just walked away, and they don't even buy anymore. And they're not browsing in the stores or even buying from the stores since a lot of the stores are now gone. What we're hearing is that people aren't coming in every week. They're coming in every 2, 3, 4 weeks picking up their bundles. Except, again, that's not true either. There's plenty of stories of retailers, and I've seen the pictures. They'll sit there with a big stack, next to them saying it's like $1,562 worth of comics that has been from one file that has not been picked up. And so now the store has to eat that. See, again, this is how out of touch Buckley is. He has no idea what is happening on the front lines. We have to get them to start coming to the store more often, start browsing more often. Yes, we have to get new readers in there, but we have to get the ones that have been habitual readers or lapsed readers to come into the store more often than they are. Again, but what have you done to make them feel like they should be there? You're not producing work they want to see, and your people on the internet aren't treating them as though they're valued. What possible reasoning could they have? Nothing you said in the Comics Pro dissertation suggested you had any concern for these people. So what possible reasoning could they have to want to come back? I think where a lot of frustration comes in the industry is that for many years, as you well know, it was pretty easy to evaluate what the size of the industry was because everyone distributed through one place and we could look at the numbers and figure out what the size of the industry was and what was going on. He's talking about Diamond. I think what Comics Pro is doing, trying to figure out where we can get some more industry data that's broader in place that can give us better optics into the actual size of the industry and how all the players in that industry are doing will be very helpful. Yeah, there's some challenges there, but I feel pretty good about the industry as a whole. Again, completely out of touch. Completely out of touch. I mean, my God, is he living in the same world? Is he on the same plane of existence? You mentioned trying to get the Wednesday Warriors coming in more. We've heard from retailers that shortening up of series with more and more one-shots, more and more miniseries, and fewer longer ongoing series makes it harder to maintain the habit of collecting. Marvel is definitely in that role. We're hitting some of the same things, and we're experimenting with going a little longer or extending out more. I think the days of having a 500-issue run is probably a reach, but we are looking at having less limited series and more ongoing with all our characters. So right there, he's already admitting defeat. Yeah, we're not going to try to get those big runs like we used to have. Yeah, we're canceling them at like 10 issues now. Yeah, maybe we'll push them out to 15. That's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm hearing. How about you guys? What are you hearing? That's all I hear. Oh, maybe we'll push them out a little more. Maybe we'll try to drag it out. Maybe we'll make it to 25 issues, and then, all right, we'll have to call that one good. I'm not going to say there won't be limited series, but I'm at the moment approving some series for 10 issues at a time, not 4 or 5. I mean, is this a joke? I mean, is he trying to punk us? Hopefully I can get it to 15 or 20. Just 20 issues and like, wow, that's a hell of a run. 20 issues. I remember back in the day when if you didn't break 50 issues, you were considered a failure. I remember Quasar. Quasar lasted 60 issues. That's the intent. Because to be honest, it's a lot of work on our editorial staff too to restart books all the time. Then why do you keep doing it? I mean, come on. It's like he's acting like this is like something they can't control. It's very easy to control. Stop producing shit work, and then you don't have to keep rebooting all the goddamn time. This is not rocket science. This is not brain surgery. There's a lot of work on our marketing staff to remarket a book coming out. It's to the benefit of everyone to figure this out. Yes, it is. And I've already figured it out for you, Dan. Can your shitty politics-minded creators put on people who care about the characters and wanting the books to sell, create quality work, quit fucking dropping books and renumbering everything every 6 months for a new number one, go for those 500 fucking issue runs, and when some of the fucking leftist whiners start coming in saying that they hate this because you're not having enough diversity, tell them to go fuck off and die and keep doing what you're doing. That's the solution, my friend. There you go. I just helped you figure it out. You're welcome. You mentioned the middle grade market as a growing area. Marvel has taken a little different strategy over the last few years, which is to do more licensing of your properties to other publishers that are already strong in that market. Why did you choose that path rather than trying to publish that material for younger readers yourself? I will admit we tried for a couple of years, but there's a couple of different things that really played into it. One, I've got a great editorial staff, I've got a great sales team, and they've done great work over the years. The blind leading the blind. They're great at telling stories in our core ecosystem of the direct market, which is why the numbers are so wonderful, because they're so great at that. Asking them to do stories that work a little bit differently and target different demographics was a bit unfair to them, and I think was confusing the system within our own group. Yes, telling them you need to target this at a certain group was somehow unfair. Okay. The other thing is that I thought it was important to work with partners that have the best distribution channels to get those readers. I could have made perfect product, but then I would have to figure out how to get those readers to show up in the stores. Yes, because God forbid that you actually have to market your fucking work. What I need to do first is figure out how to make the product intelligently, getting kids connected to our characters of that age group, and get product in their hands. Hopefully, we'll work with our partners to make that product available in our hobby shops. It's not my decision completely, but we are going to work on that, which basically means that nothing's going to change. What I thought was more important to learn was to learn stuff from other publishers who have great success selling this type of product to that age group, and we've been really happy with the results, and we're learning a lot. Licensing isn't just a business revenue approach, it's a strategy to figure out the best way to do things that you're not an expert at. Well, given everything we've seen so far from Dan, he doesn't seem to be much of an expert on anything in this business. So, how many partners is he going to need? Comic sales and graphic novel sales were softer last year. You mentioned something in your keynote at Comics Pro that you were doing to try to improve the product, specifically the internal process that you're using to try to bring people together for better planning and to make the results more creatively driven. We're tapping into the process that worked really well for us pre-pandemic. It's made a big difference because getting the editorial staff physically in the same room makes editors speak to each other. It makes creators talk to each other. It gets people more excited about projects. But are you making the readers excited for the projects? Are you making the retailers excited for the projects? Just asking. It's much more helpful with interacting with our marketing team because everyone can feel that they're getting face time and they're contributing. They can feel like they're, not that they actually are, mind you, they get to feel like they are. I do feel like Blood Hunt is a much stronger presentation than anything we've done in a really long time because people are in the room talking to each other, getting excited, coming up with ideas. The X-Men from the Ashes launch in July is also benefiting from that interaction. Yes, the X-Men relaunch with 3 writers who are horrible, leading the way. The Blood Hunt story, which I'm being told to a lot of people I've heard is pretty much like pointless and way too long, like 60-some books to tell this story, where it's basically the Marvel heroes versus vampires. I mean, you could have done a 4-issue miniseries and told that story. This is what getting everyone together is getting you. Overblown events and middling relaunches by shitty creators. That's what they want you to get excited for. The other side of the product area, beyond process, is talent. Compared to 10 years ago, you're in a much more competitive environment for talent, not just from more publishers involved in comics, but you mentioned Kickstarter earlier. You've got opportunities for people to go direct to consumer. There are opportunities for talent to own portions of the companies that they're being published by. There's media participation. How does Marvel compete in that environment, and how can you maintain your access to talent? That's a very good question. This should be interesting, I think. I don't buy your initial theory. So there you go, right there. You just told. I don't believe that hogwash, that malarkey. I think there's plenty of talent in the industry to tap into. Oh my God. I think there's plenty of talent in the industry to tap into. You know, out of everything I've read from this asshole, this has to be the most out of touch thing I've heard him say. Where is this great talent in the industry? Where? Who? You know? Where are the Todd McFarlanes, the John Burns, the George Perez's, the Alan Moores, the Mark Millers, the Bill Mantlos? Where are these men? Where are these people? Where are the Anna Sentis? Where are the Louise Simonsons? The Walt Simonsons? In the industry today? Who are they? Because I don't see them. Again, the closest I can come to is maybe Daniel Warren Johnson with the new Transformers book. And maybe Robert Kirkman, maybe. Although based more off, his past work than the current stuff, that X-Men and Krakoa nonsense. But that's about it. Who else you got? Where's the talent? You've driven them off. And now they're out there making their own stuff, a la Comicsgate and the like. Or they've moved into other areas, advertising, copywriting, whatever, that's actually gives them a better paycheck and benefits than working in comics. Or they just given up and walked away. So all you got is a bunch of middling fucking Tumblr types working on everything. And the work shows it. And the sales show that. Jesus Christ. There's cycling of talent always as people age out or move into other mediums, or they're just not as hot as they were 5 years ago. Interacting and recruiting talent obviously got crushed during the pandemic. You can't keep hiding behind the fucking pandemic. It was 4 fucking years ago. We're reinvigorating the process, and that's where getting in the rooms and talking to each other is incredibly important, because the talent that's coming up and you're talking to, they're in a room. They're talking like two people. They're getting to feel for how we operate. Translation, they're being told, you better be with the program of indoctrination and DEI and CRT, or, you're done. That's basically what that is. Yeah, the world is always changing. It's challenging, but we're no longer in the peak TV world. 2 years ago, there were 600 TV shows being made. There were an exorbitant amount of live action TV shows being made, right? That number's going down. Yes, because the ones you put out sucked and nobody watched and they failed. And they blew your parent company, your corporate overlords, millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. There's talent available out there in the world, and I'm feeling less poaching from outside, but there's also more of us being out there recruiting people, and that's great. I don't see Kickstarters being a problem for Marvel. It's a place to recruit talent from, except why would they do that? If they're being successful at crowdfunding, if they're able to make 6- and 7-figure crowdfunding goals on their own projects that they own, that they get all the rights to, so that there's a movie or a TV deal or anything, any kind of licensing of apparel or knickknacks, they get the money. Why would they want to go say, let me take my talent to Marvel, where they'll suck me dry, take everything I have, and then throw me away when they're done? All for a pittance of what I'm making now. Who would sign up for that, Dan? Just asking. It's no different than looking at guys who are doing image books and saying, hey, come over here and work with us. We're a work for hire shop. You do your creator owned. We'd love to have you come on board. But do they want to come on board, Dan? That's the thing. You may want them to come on board, but they're not going to. Maybe they've been burned by you in the past. They're not going to do it again. Maybe they're making more money now doing what they're doing now. They ain't going to go down work for you for less. Finding talent is hard. Not arguing that point, except you are. But I don't think it's any harder than it was 5 years ago. No, it's actually much harder. It's actually much harder. It's been a few years now since the big distribution change, and you addressed the whole fragmentation of data and some of the things that are being done to try to improve that side of it. Retailers obviously have more burdensome relationships to manage in terms of the numbers of relationships they have to manage to get product in. You said when you made the change that it would bring in better infrastructure and it's going to help us. Do you think those two things have balanced out in a positive way? I'll admit the data is frustrating and I don't have to deal with the headaches the retailers deal with on a day-to-day basis. Wow. Wow. I don't know. I know having multiple vendors and multiple partners is challenging, but sometimes really good things have come out of that. How retailers deal with shipping and freight, it's better situation for them now than before. How quaint of him to say without actually, knowing. As he said, he doesn't deal with the day-to-day basis stuff, but yet he knows this is so much better for them. Competition helps us in this space. I had a great partnership with Diamond, but I think it's been beneficial to the industry. Are there growing pains? Of course. These are big changes for everybody. Is everyone happy with us for it? No. And I get that too. And they don't have to be happy, and I respectfully understand that, i.e., I don't give a damn. We're looking at things slightly differently. We're approaching things differently. We feel like we're in a better position to help grow the industry as a whole for a variety of different reasons, but I prefer not to get into it. Translation, I have nothing. I don't know what's going on here. We did these things because at the time we felt it we had to save the company. We didn't care about the retailers. We didn't care about the readers. We didn't care about the distributors. We didn't care about anybody else but ourselves. Fuck all them. It was all about us. And as far as how this goes forward, well, we have no fucking clue. That's what he's saying. Another question on content. Over the past decade, Marvel has very successfully expanded the demographics of its audience. That's led to an overall growth in the opportunity, which almost everybody regards as positive. But there is a thought from some quarters that led to a decline in appeal for that old core audience of teen and young adult males. What are your thoughts on that? I don't think broadening of our audience had anything to do with if there was some degradation in our appeal with teens and young adult males. If we weren't making the right product to resonate with them out of the core publishing business, that was on our content plan. That was our content plan, not that was on our content plan, not on the broadening of our content and demographics. But the content plan was to get those demographics. So by focusing on those demographics and not on the ones that you had, and changing the content to focus on those new demographics and not on the ones you had, you conceivably drove away the one that you had, and unfortunately for you, the ones you wanted did not show up. See, this is the stuff that isn't said. Our sales don't indicate that we have a huge problem. Obviously, the pandemic created a bunch of white noise. No, Dan, you're the one making white noise every time you mention the pandemic. We have to continue to do a better job leveraging the demographic tentacles that have been created by the success of our games team, and the studio team, and Spidey and his amazing friend on Disney Junior. We continue to say, how do we take advantage of this reach to help feed the comic book business and grow and sustain that readership base? You've driven away the readership base, Dan, with shitty work and shitty attitude creators online. The Wednesday Warriors you keep saying you want. They're gone. You drove them away. They're the demographic you threw over for the other demographics you were trying to quote unquote reach for. No, I don't buy that our broadening caused a decrease in No, I don't buy that our broadening caused a decrease in readership. You can find a specific book to say maybe that story didn't resonate, but I don't buy that argument. So again, just in case we're just like, I don't believe that. Nope. Nothing to see here. Nope. That didn't happen. Nope. Never mind that, Brian Hibbs, those numbers, they prove exactly the opposite of what Dan Buckley is saying. Nope. I don't buy it. I mean, what more is there to say after that? What more is there left to say after that? I mean, you can't help a guy who refuses to acknowledge what's actually happening. You just, I mean, and this is the guy in charge. This is the president of Marvel. This is the president of Marvel talking. We already seen the decrease of sales. We already see shops closing. We see, people not buying anymore. He admitted himself. We got to get the Wednesday Warriors back because they're not there anymore. They're not shopping like they used to. So you said all that, but then says, I don't buy that our broadening caused a decrease in readership. I mean, that's like me lighting something on fire and go, well, I don't think that fire burned that. You can't make up how out of touch these people are. You really can't. But, to me, all this stuff that I've shown you today, it shows you, one is where the problems are and that the truth is finally getting through. As much as they want to hide, as much as they want you to believe that everything is fine and hunky-dory, they know it's not. But even though they now are admitting that there are problems, or as Dan calls them, challenges, even though they're starting to admit that now, they still refuse to admit the reasoning for why. It's like if you were an alcoholic and saying, well, yeah, I admit alcohol is a problem, but you don't address, well, what made you an alcoholic? How can you ever hope to get over it? You can't. I know this from personal experience. My father was, God rest his soul, was an alcoholic. And he tried stopping for everybody. My mother, me, my siblings, his mother, God, the law, his job. But he couldn't stop because he wasn't addressing the real problem. And the problem was that he had to want to stop. And he wasn't going to stop until he addressed whatever it was that got him to become an alcoholic in the first place. And he never did. And this is the same thing. Yeah, there's problems. Yeah, there's challenges. But until you acknowledge why that exists, and you stop hiding behind comfortable, euphemisms and scapegoats like the pandemic, you're never going to fix it. So this is why you can't have optimism like Dan says. You can't be excited and exuberant for what's to come because, as you saw, they've learned nothing from it. They're doubling down on the same stupidity that got them where they are. And they're either too blind, too arrogant, or too stupid to see it. So much so that they just brush it off. I don't buy that argument. I don't see that as a problem. It's truly sad that it's come to this, but I fully believe that the only way things are going to change is for the industry to completely go under for the third time. It can fail as many times as you want. You can do all the damage you want to do, but until it's completely destroyed, there is nothing to be done. It cannot be saved. This is what I've come to over the course of all these live streams I've done for the past, 4.5 years. I've come to the point where I've accepted the mainstream has to die. The direct market has to die. It cannot be saved because the people in charge are too stupid and too arrogant to ever admit that they were wrong about anything. It will always be something else's fault, some external factor. Oh, it was, the lack of data. Oh, it was a pandemic. Oh, it was, market forces, from the economic downturns. This is what they'll point to instead of saying, yeah, we're just producing shitty work. We've turned away an audience for one that didn't show up. We altered icons and destroyed them all for the sake of ESG scores and virtue signaling points. And in the end, it's given us nothing. Instead of just saying that, which is the God's honest truth, they'll just keep on trying to deflect and ignore the 800-pound elephant in the room, even as they say, well, yeah, there's problems. They say the first step to addressing your problem is to admit you have one. But they don't seem even interested in getting past that point. And so it just has to end. So, I would just tell you, go out there, support people who are worth supporting. Your crowdfunding guys who, produce good works, your Aaron LaPrestis, your Graham Nolans, people like that, people who know how to produce a book that's worth buying, and just move forward that way, because in this industry, in this direct market industry, there's nothing left. All the icons have to die, and then maybe when it all comes tumbling down and the corporations go with it, Disney, Time Warner, Discovery, and they have to sell off assets, maybe they'll sell off Spider-Man and Batman to some people who actually give a damn, and then they'll produce the kind of work that really matters to us. They'll make the characters great again. Or they'll just license them out maybe to somebody who will make the characters great. Because the people who are in charge now, again, the people you saw, the X-Men reboot coming up, and the slice of life books they want and stuff, they don't have any idea what they're doing. They have no clue how to fix any of this. Not just the low-level creatives, but even, as you saw, the president of Marvel himself has no idea. He is totally clueless. And anything that does not fit his little worldview that he wants to believe, he just disregards. And for someone like that, there's only one possibility, and that has to be total abject failure. Well, that'll about do it for this stream, which, wow, 3 hours. Didn't realize it was going to take that long to go through all that stuff. But yeah, it is what it is. But the gaslighting continues. But the facts and the reality of the situation, it's breaking through. They can't lie about certain stuff anymore. It's painfully obvious. It's so obvious that, a blind man can see it, and they're going to have to come to terms with it at some point. But I don't think they'll do it in time to save anything. So it's the way it's got to be, I guess. Sad, but still somewhat regrettable, and totally preventable if they would have just listened. Well, I want to thank you guys for joining me today. I hope you got some interesting thoughts out of this. I hope I brought some interesting info to you, maybe stuff you can use yourself. If someone, like I said, if people start to try to come at you saying, the comic industry is doing great, you can come back with some of this stuff you saw here and say, nah, these numbers, they don't say that. Because the only way you can beat lies is with truth. And so that's what I tried to provide here today. I hope I did that. And I want to thank you all for joining me today. As for what's coming up, I don't have another one of these planned for a while yet. I'll have to see what comes down the line. But I do have a couple items I've ordered, so I know I'll be getting some stuff in. I'll be doing some unboxing videos. Some what's in the box will be coming. Of course, there's the return of Why It's Great. I've done a couple of those already, so hopefully you guys have checked those out. And if you haven't, please do. Links below to both of those. And I have SummerCon coming up in less than 2 weeks, so hopefully I'll get some stuff there for you guys, and I'll have some reporting there from the show for you guys. Maybe I'll get some videos, some stuff, some cool things I can share with you guys from there. So definitely got more content coming, and I want to thank you for joining me today. So please make sure to subscribe, hit the like button. If you got anything you want to say, if you thought I did a good job with this stuff, hit me down there with a comment. If you don't, hit me with a comment. Let me know what you think. Was there something in there that you think I missed? Is there something in there that you think was a point that didn't get addressed? Let me know. I want to hear what you got to say. So make sure to drop me a comment. And I want to thank you all again for joining me today. And until next time, take care.